Hello, today on my channel you will hear an amazing story about life. I hope you enjoy this story. This one struck me to the core. Honestly, I still can't forget it. Enjoy watching.
Emily hadn't felt such despair in a long time. Everything seemed to be fine just a couple of days ago, and today she lost her beloved husband Michael. Acute heart failure. What scary words, especially when written in an official and dry medical report. Tears flowed from Emily's eyes. But how could it be? 32 years old, still to live and live. Even the happiness of fatherhood has not had time to enjoy. And how happy he was when after the ultrasound it became known about the triplets. He was glowing. Michael had never had any heart problems. However, if you knew where you would fall, you would have laid the straw. It was my job that killed Michael. I got pregnant and dumped all the business on him. Deals, important negotiations, contracts. Hear the heart, and did not withstand. Emily corrupted herself. The pregnant businesswoman's well-being left much to be desired. Voluminous tummy every now and then came up. And inside there was a real hurricane. 3 kids behaved as if, despite the grief of the mother, arranged a soccer match. Toxicosis coupled with severe vertigo for many months deprived Emily of peace and the ability to conduct business. Michael happily joined the work, doing everything as it should be. But then the company began a gradual decline. First, revenues declined, and the staff underwent a series of layoffs. Once set up Emily mechanism has failed, which led to a partial collapse of the firm. Michael was torn between home and work, trying to find the cause of the losses. And Emily, if she got involved in work, could only manage it from home. You take care of yourself. Emily, I'll manage, sweetheart. It's true. There's a lot of people in a fever right now. Not just us. I've been making inquiries, so don't worry. We'll get through this, Michael reassured her. At such moments, he seemed to Emily very sweet and dear, and her eyes began to sting. There was a shroud of tears. True, then they were tears of joy, not grief. Why on earth had she agreed to Michael's proposal? Well, they would have involved professionals from the outside. They would have offered good pay, but she would have saved her husband. Sobbing Emily repeated over and over. Michael became ill during business negotiations in the restaurant. According to eyewitnesses, in the midst of discussion of a hot topic, he grabbed his hand over his heart and with a groan fell to the floor. The companions did not wait for an ambulance. They decided to take him to the hospital on their own transport. If they only knew what a mistake they made, not turning to the medics in time. Michael did not reach the clinic just a couple of minutes, having gone into the next world in the backseat of a foreign car. Upon learning of this, Emily clutched her stomach, moaning softly. Just a couple hours ago, she had been preparing a delicious dinner for her husband. Now she learned such shocking news. Such an unpleasant mission had been undertaken by Emily's best friend Jessica, who had been among the first to find out. You just don't go anywhere, please, okay? And knowing that all kinds of stress, long trips are contraindicated for you at this term. But I just couldn't help but tell you this, Jessica said. Bitter tears streamed down Emily's cheeks, leaving salty streaks that burned her skin like lye. But how can you not worry here, when you just found out you were a widow? Emily hadn't felt this kind of shock in a long time, probably not since her father died tragically, and a wave of sadness and grief washed over her mother. James Victor Thompson was an ordinary tractor driver, working on the farm since time immemorial, when he returned from the army. There were no farms then, though. There'd always been the well-to-do, those who have land plots that can't be counted, and barns bursting with grain and other agricultural products. A lot of capital, of course. But their greed knew no bounds. You can never ask for new equipment. You wait and hope and repair the old. James couldn't wait. On the old tractor fell into the lake. His breadwinner did not abandon and left the cabin only when the dark abyss dragged the bulky machine to the bottom. It was said that the lake had long been considered cursed. More than a century ago, a bride from a very noble merchant family died in it. The groom betrayed her 2 days before the wedding, cheated on her in the hayloft with another. The heart of the merchant's daughter couldn't stand the deception. It was her first love, and therefore extremely painful and passionate. After learning of the betrayal, the bride broke her wedding dress and went into the lake. She's never been seen since. Only her veil was found on the shore, and a mud-soaked slipper without a second pair. Anyway, the villagers quickly put 2 plus 2 together. They immediately realized that the merchant's daughter had taken the lake to herself. From then on, it became notorious. Not even 3 years passed without someone drowning in it. And Emily's father was added to the list of victims. Seems like an accident. And that's just at first glance. The tractor was malfunctioning. The right parts failed at the right time. How did James feel? Emily well remembered his conversation with his mother before going to work, that it would be good to stand on the repair. But apparently fate. And besides Emily, there were 4 other children in the family. She was the oldest. The Thompsons were already poor, and after the death of their breadwinner, they became destitute. Of course, the villagers helped as much as they could. They didn't leave a family of many children to fend for themselves, but it was just a drop in the ocean. Emily was the first to feel the desperate poverty. Since her mother worked as a milkmaid, The care of younger brothers and sisters entirely fell on her fragile shoulders. Plus, I ran to my mother after school to the farm and helped her as much as I could, and the troubles of childhood flew by unnoticed. Sarah Thompson could not come to terms with the loss of her husband, and therefore did not want to connect her life with anyone else. After graduating from high school, Emily went to the city, from where her ascent to the top of the business Olympus began. Although it is only in words, everything is so simple. In fact, Emily had to work hard and study by correspondence to get the coveted higher education. The wisdom of business the girl learned, standing behind the counter of the grocery store. To do this, she closely followed the owner and how she acts in this or that situation, how to report on taxes, how to conduct quarterly inspections and communicate with representatives of all kinds of supervisory services. These lessons were not in vain for the determined girl and served her well after graduation. Emily had to go through a lot before she could achieve real success. Probably such a chance falls only once in a lifetime, and Emily made the most of it. Michael came into her life 2 years ago. Their meeting was an accident. At first, the young businesswoman did not even give it much thought. Little what kind of meetings happened on her life path. But Michael was not at all going to retreat so easily and courted Emily persistently and beautifully. Chic bouquets of roses, expensive gifts, romantic walks under the moon. What could be better when you were about to turn 30? And in his personal life, success is not much. No, some romances with representatives of the male sex Emily happened, and not so rare. But only to nothing definite they eventually did not lead. You need to get married. How long are you going to pull the business alone? You know you can't do it without a man's shoulder, said Jessica, a friend at the fitness center. Yeah, I know, I get it, but I can't marry just anyone. I need to be sure the man is worthwhile. Also reliable, trustworthy, Emily replied. Jessica just shook her head, thinking that her friend would be an old maid with suitcases full of money. What does that have to do with it? The main thing for me is to find a man to my liking. How do you understand? That's how Mom and Dad lived soul to soul, a family with many children, children's laughter, and the holidays were fun. Daddy would make a snowman for New Year's Eve and decorate the house with tree branches. Mom always baked pies and also pancakes with cottage cheese. Cheese mushrooms, recalled Emily. If only Daddy were alive now, she stretched out wistfully. Jessica struggled to suppress a mocking smile and stared with great interest at the mirror she had pulled out of her voluminous handbag. Her friend's stories about the village were boring her. And really, what was there to do in this backwater, where the only entertainment was a television with a couple, or 3 channels and 1 store for the whole neighborhood? Despite the fact that Jessica had been married twice already, she still hoped that she would meet her unique and beloved soulmate, someone who would make her feel like she was behind a stone wall, where the main masonry consisted of money and jewelry of the highest caliber. It was Jessica who first drew Emily's attention to Michael Zodoff, handsome man, strong-willed chin, intelligent look, not the last man in business. Emily perfectly understood all this, and mentally agreed with the arguments of her friend. Only there was one circumstance that kept her from a hasty wedding, and that reason had its roots in her native village of Greenville. Since then, Emily's mother had been experiencing strange visions, most often during sleep, when the body rests, and the brain removes all the blockages, giving free rein to many hidden possibilities. That the approach of trouble felt when the farm fire happened, or the local letter carrier to help find the mailman. After he was robbed by escaped convicts, the locals first thought Sarah was a witch, but the woman immediately refuted their speculations. When she went to work in the church and devoted herself to serving God, the visions did not stop, of course, but they became much less frequent than before. But Sarah herself found great satisfaction and peace of mind in serving the church. But when she learned of her daughter's upcoming wedding, she immediately told her about one of these dreams. Don't be in a hurry, my daughter, to tie your life to this man. I see that you like him and his appearance is pleasant, but there will be no happiness with him. My dear, don't jump to conclusions. I can't tell you everything. But listen to my words, and think carefully. Emily then, not wanting to upset her mother's refusal, promised to think and not to hurry with the wedding. 2 months later, she stood in the registry office, in a white dress, and put on Michael's finger ring. Invited to the ceremony, guests with undisguised delight watched as the newlyweds observed the necessary conditions of the wedding ritual, except that when it was the turn of the groom, he did not hold the ring, and the expensive thing with a melodious tinkle rolled on the floor. Emily's heart gave an anxious twinge. It's bad luck. There will be no happiness in the family. The bride bit her lip painfully as she watched the groom pick up the ring from the floor on his knees. The mood was hopelessly spoiled. No, it wasn't Michael's fault. It's just the way things are in life. A man couldn't hold on to a ring, so you can't blame him for that, can you? No, it's all nonsense, village prejudice, as well as visions of Mom. Emily mentally reassured herself, but no matter how hard she tried, her mood remained low. But the string of minor mishaps and oddities didn't end there, and found its continuation during the celebration of the main part of the event, when the bride and groom were offered a loaf, and there was such a strong wind that he almost ripped out of the hands of Michael's mother along with the salt. Sarah Thompson immediately crossed herself and cradled the icon in fear. Was this a joke? Look what's happening. Even nature itself has rebelled against this wedding. The sun was shining in the morning, but by lunchtime, just in time for the ceremony, the sky covered with clouds. And then there's the lightning, and it's flashing. It's just in case it strikes somewhere and causes trouble. The cherry on the cake was the bridal bouquet contest. When Emily randomly threw it behind her back, a gust of wind picked up the bouquet and carried it to the feet of a lonely tramp on crutches a couple of dozen meters away from the main procession. The beggar was watching with obvious interest, and he was not at all embarrassed when by fate a wedding bouquet fell into his hands. The groom threw an angry look in the direction of the stranger, but did not develop a conflict situation. Why get his hands dirty about this poor man who was about to fall off his crutches, and then deal with him? But the look of the tramp made a lasting impression on Emily. There was something about him that made her heart sink and her soul feel strangely warm. Emily winked at the homeless guy, waved her hand, and smiled her sweetest smile. "It's okay, buddy. There will be a holiday on your street too," she thought. It had been only 2 years ago, and it seemed like 20 years at least. Emily's eyes filled with tears again. The memories seemed so painful that they completely robbed her of her strength. Michael, why did you leave me so early?" And in such a vulnerable position, Emily said mentally. It had cost her a great deal of labor to pull herself together. She had no one to turn to for help in this situation. She didn't want to worry her mom. Sarah Thompson had had a hard enough time with her husband's death and her 5 children. She didn't want to experience again the mournful emotions that had troubled her for years. No, that wasn't going to happen. Emily loved her mom too much to put her in harm's way again. "It's okay, I can handle it. I'll just get the formalities sorted out. It's just my business." Nothing more, Emily told herself. Michael's parents had gone abroad on a business trip. She had already cut off all the phones, and they had fallen through the ground. Now she again turned into the very businesswoman who was proud of her subordinates all these years. And though Emily's appearance left much to be desired, and her state of mind was even worse, she still pulled herself together. What else could she do? Be sad, shed tears, and wait for help. But from whom? Jessica had already done quite a bit, promising to make a deal with the pathologist and not do an autopsy. But you realize, what's it all for? Michael's heart failed him. It's understandable as it is. Why torture your soul with all these papers, medical reports? You're the one who's going to the cemetery. Well, don't go there yourself, of course. God forbid. At least call on the phone, or at worst, send a trusted person. Let him handle everything, Jessica said. Emily sighed convulsively, but didn't refuse. Jessica's words definitely made sense, and she didn't want to argue about it. Nor did she want to entrust the funeral arrangements to a complete stranger. Nothing. I'll go to the cemetery myself and handle everything. This is my beloved husband, she decided. A visit to a mournful place, and even in the last month of pregnancy, is not a pleasant task. Her heart was pounding like crazy, and the baby's belly was having another celebration of life. Stopping in front of the massive iron gate that led to the realm of death, Emily wondered, should she really take Jessica up on her offer? There were dozens of funeral parlors in the city, whose employees knew their business and would help anyone who approached them. But Emily didn't want to entrust the job to any stranger. The only thing she feared was the sight of her late husband. The fear of seeing Michael on the morgue table was so strong that Emily knew she wouldn't go there for anything in the world. Gathering her courage, Emily entered the cemetery grounds and headed toward the office. She wanted to talk to the caretaker, who was in charge of all the burials in that part of town. When she saw the pregnant woman, James Victor's face changed immediately. My God, look how young she is. Is this some kind of grief? The elderly caretaker was not deceived by his premonition. It was rare to come to a cemetery just like that, especially with a black kerchief tied around one's head. After listening to his guest's confused story, James Victor thought for a moment, then said, "Tell you what, sweetheart, I'll help you, though not as much as I'd like. It's about 100 meters down here. We're laying a new row of graves. Anyway, I've got Greg working there. Tell him what's for me. He'll do it right, and he'll take the least amount of money. He's a modest man, and I'm not greedy, and you'd better not come to the cemetery so much. You should be thinking about your kids first. Pregnant women don't belong in a cemetery." Tears glistened in the corners of Emily's eyes. Is it really about the money? I just want my husband to be happy. I'm ashamed of myself for saying such a thing. The keeper sighed sympathetically and pointed her in the right direction. It was hard on his heart. But what could he do? How could he help in such a situation? It was the same thing every time. He sees the pain in other people's eyes and immediately lets it pass through him. That's what happened when he worked as a doctor. No, not a surgeon, but a district therapist. There were times when he had to make house calls. What else could I do? And all would be nothing. But when his beloved wife was gone, James became sad, and then came his pension. Couldn't stay at home, so he went to the cemetery. At first, he even helped dig graves. He was in good health, of course. James is wiry, like he's got a motor running inside him. But when age took its toll, he became caretaker, and the town cemetery was in perfect order. James Victor never took any extra money. He treated people's misfortune with understanding and sympathy, and now, having learned about Emily's grief, tried to help her in any way he could. Stroking her round belly with her hand, Emily walked in the direction indicated. Looking at the rows of monuments and tombstones, she caught herself thinking that nothing in life is permanent. That's how a person lives, strives for something, sometimes even goes head over heels to follow his dream or goal. And the result is the same. A grave and tears of relatives, if there are any, of course. Emily noticed at once that the cemetery had its own special silence, unlike the silence of the forest. For example, it held the silence of human grief and sorrow that only those who had lost a loved one could understand. Emily noticed the figure of Greg's gravedigger from afar. Wide, though thin shoulders, good posture, and clothes suitable only for such hard work. Hearing uncertain footsteps behind him, Greg turned around and met Emily's eyes. The guy's open, kind face was involuntarily disposing, giving hope for a pleasant, full of mutual compromise dialogue. "You must be Greg." Emily was the first to start the conversation. She involuntarily caught herself thinking that she had seen this guy somewhere before. "Yeah, that's right. What can I do for you?" the gravedigger asked politely. Tears sprang from Emily's eyes again. A lump rose in her throat, as if she'd been peppered. Luckily, Greg was understanding and quickly realized what was going on. "Don't worry, I'll make it right. Not for the money, of course, but out of the goodness of my heart. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm so upset. I can't get used to the idea. I can't get used to the idea of my husband," Emily sobbed. Greg nodded understandingly. "It's okay, I understand. Especially since we know each other in absentia." "What do you mean?" Greg was embarrassed, and an embarrassed blush appeared on his cheeks. "I saw you once on your wedding day. It was windy, and the bride's bouquet was carried straight into my hands. You were laughing, remember?" A faint smile touched Emily's lips. Only now she remembered where and when she'd seen this guy before. "Wow, how did I not realize that?" "Yeah, Greg, see what happened. It's only been 2 years, and I'm already a widow. I haven't even had 3 under my belt yet," Emily said confidentially. The guy looked anxiously at the voluminous belly of the client and involuntarily experienced an attack of severe anxiety. "And how could this happen?" "Look, let me do everything myself so that you do not come to the cemetery again." Emily sighed sadly. A few minutes earlier, an elderly caretaker had told her the same thing. Suddenly it hit Emily. Why not? As long as Greg agreed. I mean, all sorts of things happen in life. "Hey, Greg, could you pick up my husband's body from the morgue? I'll pay for it. Don't worry, I won't forget the hearse and the orderlies. You just have to show up at a certain time. I don't think I could do it myself, but not now." "I'm afraid I can't take it. It's only a few weeks away," Emily asked cautiously. Greg looked at her in surprise, but he didn't rush to answer. It seemed like a very unusual request. It wasn't every day that you were asked for such favors. On the other hand, could he refuse this unfortunate woman whose life was going downhill? "All right, I'll do it. Just tell me what's going on. I won't let you down." Greg's voice trembled. Emily deduced that he was worried. After walking the pregnant woman to the gate, he hailed a cab and returned to the cemetery, where his work awaited him again. In parting, the gravedigger left her James Victor's cell phone number, since he'd recently taken his old cell phone in for repair. Greg had come to the cemetery by accident. He was wandering among the graves looking for work when an elderly caretaker called out to him, "Come on over. Don't be afraid, dear man. Do you need a job?" By any chance, it seemed to James Victor a kind of test. It was not the first time the vagabonds had visited the cemetery, but they had never agreed to work here with anyone. It's understandable, beggars are free in the city. There they asked for alms at the store or in the subway. Here you help a janitor with leaves. Before you know it, the coveted paper is already resting in your pocket. The main thing is not to be lazy, not to sit long in one place. But at the cemetery, you have to work hard. And it's hard to dig into the ground with a shovel and throw it up with a pickaxe if necessary. To the caretaker's surprise, Greg agreed at once. According to the boy, he had been through a lot of hardship in his life. That's why he valued work more than anything else. Orphanage, bleak childhood, adolescence. No, Greg didn't starve to death, of course. Why would he lie? The food at the orphanage was good. The only thing that was always in short supply was sweets. The only hope was that on New Year's Eve and Easter they'd give the children something tasty. When he came out of the orphanage, the adult world was stunned and felt all its negativity on the unfortunate orphan. Greg never held a grudge. Why nurture blackness? Even when he'd been on the slippery slope, when he'd gotten caught with his friends in petty theft, even though he didn't take anything himself. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. It looked like Greg was given nothing, but his life went down the drain. He went out, started to vagabond, but he never stooped to outright begging. The vagrants called him man on the hour, but for his resemblance to a well-known structure specializing in small repair work, despite the fact that Greg had only a hammer and pliers as tools, he was not discouraged, helping anyone who needed his simple help. Most often his services were used by elderly people whose relatives lived very far away and visited them very rarely. He would fix the fence for one grandmother, fix the lock on the door for another, and oil the awnings. Men's hands are always valuable, especially good ones. Greg almost never took money, and if he did, It was only symbolically for travel, for example, or supplies. Grateful people gave him whatever God sent him. Some would give him a dozen fresh pies, others home canned goods, sweets, others clothes. Clothes of any kind, well, worn, of course. But Greg wasn't going to a wedding either. So he lived like that, moonlighting wherever he could. 2 years ago, he had a conflict with a private construction firm. They didn't take a lot of money, but their services weren't very good. They'd do it for a ruble, but they'd ask for a nickel. But Greg saw everything. He's not blind. So he pointed out their shortcomings to the crooks, and they invited him to a conversation in the park, saying, "Let's talk business." Greg came to the meeting without a backwards glance, naive simplicity, and they beat him to a pulp. His leg was broken, and his ribs were counted, so it hurt to breathe for weeks. Had to crawl out of the park at dusk, and then some kind people helped him out. They called an ambulance. Greg, even though he's a vagrant, he's still a human being. He understands that you have to sympathize. You can't be safe from jail or prison. Always remember that. Greg limped for a long time after the accident. For 2 or 3 months, he hobbled around on crutches until something started to improve under the March sun. He got better by force and healed his wound. Since then, he stopped doing small repairs and went to the cemetery. It's not the coziest place, but who's at ease nowadays? Every job is hard in its own way. Memories of the past were painful for Greg. At such moments, even work could not distract him from sad thoughts. Deep down, he felt sorry for Emily. What did that sweet, kind woman do to deserve such misfortune just before she gave birth? He thought as he shoveled the clods of earth from the bottom of the grave. Greg scolded himself in his thoughts for his indecision. You're good, too. I was still hesitating whether or not to go to the morgue. What's there to think about? What's in it for me? Haven't you seen enough dead people in the cemetery? Suddenly, a muffled moan or sobbing sounded a few meters away from him. Let it hurt. And what's the use of throwing the earth around? Came a child's voice from somewhere off to the side. Greg froze. He listened. What the hell is that? A boy. And in a cemetery. What a day it's been today, pregnant women and babies. I can't believe in coincidences. Greg cautiously raised his head and looked out from behind the grave. And there, the gravedigger immediately broke into a cold sweat. A huge dog was staring at him with an unblinking gaze of cold eyes. Greg backed away and pressed his back against the side wall of the grave. There wasn't much room to play. Come on, why are you scaring Uncle? Again came a child's voice, followed by the head of a boy of about 7 years old. The dog obediently retreated, as if the boy had some serious authority over him. That's better, Velvet. Well done, my friend. Good boy. Praised the little boy. Greg exhaled in relief and looked at the strange couple with interest. What do they want in the cemetery anyway? Or maybe they've come to see one of the adults. There's not much that doesn't happen in life. You, Uncle. Don't be angry with Velvet. He's not angry. When you started throwing clods of earth, I wanted to throw them back, but I held back, the boy added. Greg smiled. How did I know you guys were camped out there? I'm on the job, guys. You can see for yourself. So I apologize. The dog looked faithfully into his little master's eyes, and then shifted his gaze to the gravedigger, as if asking, Kid, should I bite his neck right now, or wait a bit? What good he'll say, he'll have time to do. And what are you doing? Did you come just like that, or maybe to see someone? Greg inquired cautiously. The boy sighed sadly and came closer. I came to see my mom, Uncle. She's buried not far from here. Velvet followed me. He's not very fond of his stepfather, especially when he's drunk. He got his paycheck yesterday, so he'll be drinking for 3 days. Greg sighed sympathetically. But what can I say? It's a sad story. And how many such families with problems around the world? Hundreds of thousands of millions. Greg paused for a moment, then handed the boy a roll of his lunch. Take a bite, kid, and I'll have some tea from the thermos, he said. A delicious decoction of rose hips. The wary little boy at first refused the treat, but the hunger in his eyes made him change his mind. As it turned out a little later, the little boy's name was Artie. His mother died 2 years ago, and since then he lived alone with his stepfather Henry, who was called Crocodile by everyone in the neighborhood. The most surprising thing was that Velvet the dog might not have been in his family. Once one of his stepfather's drinking buddies offered to accept a puppy of a breed unknown to him as a gift to repay his debt. In case he grows up, why do I need such a burden? Think about it, Henry asked incredulously. Don't you doubt it, I'll give him away. I left a basket with him at the entrance to the supermarket. That's all I need. I just put the baby in my pocket and ran away. Only my heels glistened, replied the drinking buddy. Henry thought for a moment. He didn't want a dog, but after his mother died, Artie began to cry a lot, which was sure to attract the attention of the neighbors. He was on the verge of calling Social Security when his child support money went missing. What can I say? So Henry agreed to take the baby, hoping it would be small. But Velvet had grown to the size of a decent calf and could easily carry Artie on his back, as well as a horse. Henry had realized his mistake too late, and now he had to treat the boy more courteously. Listening to Artie's story, Greg thought back to his childhood. Oh, how he had dreamed of having a dog of his own, a dog who could protect him in case of trouble and be a faithful friend. Dividing the treat Greg had given him in half, Artie began to eat it. A sausage and cheese sandwich always tasted better outdoors than indoors. Greg knew that from his own experience. What could be better than a cup of tea from a thermos paired with a pie and sandwich? It's a real treat. As you might expect, Velvet had finished his meal in one sitting, and now he was looking at Greg more peacefully. If he were to repeat the portion now, he might begin to wag his tail, but only modestly, as if reluctantly. Not a master after all. It was for Artie. Velvet was ready to turn his tail into a real propeller. This was a different story. Greg chatted with Artie for a few more minutes. Then the boy had to say goodbye to his new acquaintance. I'm going to go, Uncle Greg. If my stepfather gets home before I do, he's sure to make a scene. I'm not afraid with Velvet, don't you think? I just want to be quiet. It was my mom's birthday today, so I picked some flowers from the flower bed by the bank. I asked my stepdad for money first, but he promised me nothing. Greg looked at the boy with pity. If the guard at the flower beds had seen him, he could have grabbed him by the ear. Artie smiled. No, the security guard is a nice retired grandpa. He feeds the pigeon seeds, also feeds the swans with bread in the town pond. But there's too many pigeons. Leo told me about the birds. Don't worry, Artie, I'll buy flowers for your mother. I won't have time today, of course. But tomorrow, maybe. Greg decided to help the boy. Artie's eyes lit up with joy. Sure, it's a deal. Uncle Greg, you just buy white flowers, okay? You know, the ones with the buds? What are they called? Roses? Greg prompted. That's right, roses. They're the best. Look, my mom's next door, too. You see that cross over there? The one with the plaque that's so pretty. That's her. Valentina Timovaeva, if you need anything. Okay, I'll take care of it, buddy, Greg hastened to reassure him. The guy's heart felt noticeably warmer. It turned out that it only took a few things to make him feel at ease. Greg smiled as he looked at Artie and began to finish his work. At dusk, James Victor came up to him with a pocket light. Why are you going for the record? Sweet man, don't go to excess. It was that woman on the phone, Emily, who... You need to be at the morgue by 10 o'clock tomorrow. It's all paid for. She's a top-notch player and an expensive hearse. Your job is to accept the work and the coffin with the body of the deceased to the place of funeral, but not on your hands, of course. You have a hearse and a driver to help you. Greg visibly perked up and, setting the shovel aside, said, All right, James Victor, I'll do it. But how can you not help in a case like this? I met a boy here today. Maybe you've seen him. He came in the parlor still so big. I've seen him. How could I miss such a thing? Big dog, pedigree, probably a Labrador, or something like that. And the kid's smart, well-mannered. He even said hello and jumped up and down with Vasily. So friendly, not like today's young people, who are all in their gadgets and can't see anything farther than their noses. Greg smiled furtively, but did not object, for he knew that every generation was always dissatisfied with those who replaced them. Before going to the gatehouse for the night, Greg approached the grave the boy had indicated to him. Valentina Ivanovna Timova was a pretty girl. Her eyes smelled of kindness and warmth. And why does God take away the best from us? Greg whispered, looking at the photo under the lantern beam. His legs trembled with fatigue. His lower back ached as if a hot steel stake had been driven into it. That's it. I've got to go rest. I've had enough adventures for today. The gravedigger, who was a little tired for the day, exhaled in relief. Sleep came rather quickly. But Emily couldn't sleep for a long time, tossing and turning from side to side. Multiple pregnancies. The case was not only unique for obstetric practice, but also quite difficult for the woman in labor. By evening, Emily's legs would invariably swell and become more like two steaks. There was also a slight shortness of breath. She was very thirsty. She hadn't told anyone she knew that she intended to send Greg to the morgue. Even Jessica didn't know, though she'd been helpful enough to make the funeral easier without an autopsy. The night passed for Emily in anxious expectations and memories of the past, which she fell into time and again. She dreamt of her late father slowly sinking to the bottom of the cursed lake. For a moment, the whole world was overshadowed by a smiling Michael. His face still held a tinge of confidence and arrogance. Emily knew that her husband was like that in moments of triumph, caused by a sense of self-importance. That was when Michael had first taken over her firm. After the news of Emily's pregnancy, she liked his self-confidence. How could she not? When do you plan to take the family business to the next level? Next, Michael's face evaporated in a ghostly haze of dreams, replaced by images of the past and present. Greg woke up early. He wanted to shave and get his clothes in order. After all, he was not going to a glass recycling center, but to a medical facility. Looking at Greg with a smile, James Victor made a cup of strong coffee to keep him awake, and then added a couple of sweet breakfast bars from himself. On the way to the city morgue, Greg was visibly nervous. It was the first time he had participated in such an event. Why did he feel uneasy? When he reached the door, he hesitated, feeling that his inner excitement was clearly taking over. On the other hand, he had to keep his promise. Emily had hoped for him, and in cases like this, it was too late to back out. Opening the door, Greg found himself in a rather bright room, where an orderly of about 35 years old immediately approached him. "Good morning. Can I help you with anything?" "You may. I'd like to pick up a body. You should have gotten a call. I think the deceased name is Michael Zotov," Greg realized. The orderly raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Zotov? So they've already come for him. A family friend of his, or rather a friend." At that moment, Greg felt extremely uncomfortable. And why? I just agreed to all this. He's got relatives. Let them take it. I have nothing to do with it, he thought. Meanwhile, the orderly led him into a room where there was a massive lacquered coffin with the body of the deceased inside. The lid was tightly closed. There was another orderly and some girl in mourning, but no less fashionable clothes. Greg, sinfully, even thought that she had come not to the city morgue, but to a fashion show where the mandatory condition of dressing models was the presence of black color on their figures. The orderly who had brought Greg in was the first to break the lingering pause and said aloud, "Here's another relative, says he has an errand from the deceased's wife herself." The second orderly grimaced. His face bore the marks of last night's alcoholic libations, which were the cause of his wrinkled appearance and slight tremor of his limbs. "Andriuka, what are you doing? Jessica Vasilyevna has already formalized everything and intends to take the body. She is the best friend of the deceased's wife. She claims to be pregnant and in her last term. But it's just some vagrant. Can't you see that? Who'd want to mess with him?" Greg's breath caught for a moment with indignation. He hadn't been so ashamed in a long time. Perhaps not since the first time he'd been caught stealing a bun from the counter when he'd gone with the older boys to get scarce candy. The clerk made a terrible fuss that attracted half the market. People surrounded him, pointing their fingers as if he were a curiosity at a fair. And now, standing in the city morgue, Greg felt something like that again. Jessica looked at the tramp with hatred, trying to understand the real reasons for his behavior. What was driving him, the lust for money? Well, he's going to get it now. How much does he need? No problem. As long as I don't have to see his insolent face again, she thought. Andrew, the orderly, was wary. It was the first time he'd seen something like this, especially considering the increased zeal of Ethan's colleague. Usually he tried to dump all his work on him at the first opportunity, but today it was the other way around. Isn't he afraid they'll take the money? Maybe they already have. His eyes are shining, Andrew thought. I think the conflict is over, don't you? Everyone's going to stay where they are. I'm going to do what Emily's best friend should be doing, Jessica spoke up again. Greg looked around the room, expecting support, but he only saw it in Andrew's eyes. To tell the truth, the orderly had been working at the morgue for about a year and hadn't had time to make connections like his more clever colleague, Ethan. Moreover, Andrew never took bribes, took his work very seriously. Rumor has it that Ethan repeatedly asked the director of the morgue to dismiss his uncooperative partner, but every time he received a refusal. Andrew was a real professional and for several years worked as an orderly in surgery, where he got used to order and cleanliness. Even now, when everything seemed to be clear, he had no intention of giving up. Andrew approached the coffin standing on the pedestal and jerked the lid off, and everyone present froze. A powerful lamp shone above his head, flooding the coffin and the deceased with its light. Of course, the deceased had gone nowhere. He lay in the same position Ethan had left him in, preparing the body for the night shift. Greg, by virtue of his work, had seen the dead more than once, was used to the sight of death, leaving characteristic signs. But Michael was lying there as if he were alive. His skin was pink, pale, as if he'd just passed away a second ago, and his cheeks, which retained their natural blush. Greg gave an involuntary gasp. My God, he's as good as alive. The tramp moved closer to get a closer look at his face. Jessica gave him a scornful look and was about to make a nasty joke. When the unbelievable happened, Michael later recalled that his hair had almost turned gray from shock and his heart had frozen, like a frightened rabbit. The thing was, the dead man had sneezed. Yes, loud and clear like that, as only a healthy adult can sneeze. Greg flinched in surprise and turned his gaze to Jessica. There was no fear in her eyes at all. Her pupils glowed with anger, like those of an angry cat. Michael walked over to the coffin and pulled the dead man's clothes toward him by the collar with force. Now speak quickly. What kind of a show are you putting on here? I'll call the police right now, he exclaimed. Ethan's whole body trembled. His forehead was instantly covered with beads of sweat. I'm sorry. We didn't mean any harm, he mumbled. Be quiet, sweetheart. Don't say anything to that fool. I'm going to call my lawyer right now, Jessica yelled and reached into her purse for her smartphone. It wasn't until Michael realized he was in for a very unpleasant story. Of course, the dead man hadn't risen from the dead at Michael's beck and call. In fact, it was much simpler than that. Like the chest from the famous saying, which did not open so easily. The idea of this scam came to Ethan a year ago, when he began to cheat on his wife with her best friend Jessica. As time went on, the passions between the two lovers flared up even more, clouding their minds. When Emily found out that she was pregnant with triplets, Ethan finally realized that he was not ready to become a father. It was one thing to enjoy life with a wealthy wife, and quite another to change diapers with a trio of screaming children. No, Ethan didn't like that. He'd already cheated by pretending the hired actors were his parents. In fact, his father was a drunk, and his mother had had so many suitors that she'd lost count. Daily discussing the plan to deceive Emily, Jessica and Ethan came up with more and more details until it was just perfect. And this lovers were helped by the pregnancy of Emily, who could not work and put in Ethan's hands the management of the company with multi-million-dollar assets. Ethan figured it out very quickly. Why fake your own death for the sake of bed scenes? As you know, you can't get enough of them. But an improvised death in the status of a rich man, it's a different matter, different flavor and excitement. Jessica can be retired if need be. With money, anyone will love you. Just rustle up a few bills, and you've got a hottie in your arms. If Jessica only knew what kind of adventure she was getting into because of her own passion and stupidity. Unlike Ethan, she loved sincerely, like a cat that had found its happiness in life. Naturally, Emily didn't even realize it. And when she was to follow her husband when toxemia, fatigue, dizziness daily took away the last forces. And Ethan at this time was preparing himself a alarming suitcase with $1 million taken from the assets of the firm of a naive wife. By the time Emily would discover the disappearance, she could not even think that her late husband had done it. The rest was a matter of technique. Play up the heart attack spectacle in negotiations and bribe whoever was necessary to get the morgue to dispense with an autopsy. The lover was frantically lucky until the moment when Emily attracted Greg to the case, unsuspecting. Together with the principled orderly uncovered a conspiracy, which in the criminal practice of the city was unrivaled. Michael was unable to escape from the morgue. Artie immediately planted his foot, and the rich man who had risen from the dead stretched to his full height on the tiled floor. Greg took over for Jessica, who still hadn't been able to call her lawyer. She started yelling that she'd been lied to. Though the orderly Ethan managed to sneak out of the morgue, he didn't get far, as he was immediately apprehended by the on-call police. Greg breathed out a sigh of relief and held out his hand to Artie, without whom it would have been impossible to catch the culprits. They sealed their friendship with a firm handshake. The men laughed loudly, unashamed of the fact that they were standing in front of the city morgue and that people were passing by. At some point, a small photograph fell out of the inside pocket of Artie's robe and landed right at Greg's feet. He bent over and, taking the picture in his hands, gasped softly. "My God, that's Valentina, Artie's mother." Artie looked at his new acquaintance in surprise. "Did you two know each other?" "That's my fiancée, my ex-fiancée. I keep a picture of her as a memento." Greg swallowed convulsively. What was the orderly getting at? "No, I've only seen Valentina in a photograph. There's a plaque in the cemetery with her first name, middle name, and last name, as I remember now, Timoviva." Artie turned as pale as chalk in an instant. "What did you say? What cemetery?" "We broke up with Valya almost 8 years ago. It was a silly story, I agree. But I thought she was alive." The abundance of information made Greg dizzy. Pointing to a bench nearby, he offered to sit down and have a heart-to-heart talk. Artie listened silently, only occasionally asking leading questions. At the mention of Artie, a tear rolled down the orderly's cheek. Then another, following the exact path of its predecessor. "The son, that's my son Greg, you know. I mean, we broke up so badly with Valya. My jealousy was to blame. Always looking for trouble where there was none," Artie exclaimed heartily. Greg looked at him doubtfully. "Maybe you were wrong. Well, things happen in life. I don't think anything bad. I was just guessing." Artie flared up in an instant like a match. "What are you talking about? My Valya is not like that, you hear me? I feel Artie is my son, period." Greg gave a fake smile, then asked him to call Emily to report the theatrics played out by her unfaithful husband. Artie complied and talked on the phone for a long time, asking for clarification. Finally, Greg returned and said quietly, "Your employers are at the maternity hospital." The midwife picked up the phone. "They say the contractions started an hour ago. Called in from home in time. Cesarean emergency made. 3. But they're all boys now. Imagine." A happy smile immediately appeared on Greg's lips. "That's news." Slava jumped up. He hugged the astonished Ethan tightly, as if he were the father of the 3. The orderly had interpreted everything correctly. "The tramp is a good man. It doesn't matter that there's no money. Is that happiness? He's got a soul that would be the envy of anyone. That's how he takes care of other people's kids." Artie helped. "He's a golden man." Tears glistened in the corners of Ethan's emotionally stingy eyes. "What a wonderful day it's been today. I can't believe it. How many strange things had happened in such a short time." Lying in the room, Emily enjoyed her maternal happiness. At first, the midwife did not want to talk about the mysterious resurrection of her husband, afraid that the woman in labor will lose milk. But Emily listened to the news in silence, feeling how in the depths of her soul is born contempt for her spouse, real, sincere, such that sweeps away everything in its path, like an avalanche. Contrary to the midwife's fears, the milk did not disappear. On the contrary, there was much more of it. Apparently, Emily's body made the final decision to go on living and taking care of her children, despite the hardships of life. To Greg's delight, Ethan was not wrong in his conclusions and Artie was indeed his son. I, of course, tried to object. But Velvet brought his own word into the matter, grabbing the offender by the soft spot. He said the boy had found his father, and that parental ties should be honored. Coming to the grave of the late bride, Ethan brought a huge bouquet of roses instantly painted the mound in snow-white color of their petals, kissed the common photo. He cried softly, and even Velvet, who was standing a little farther away, began to cry softly, realizing the importance of the moment. While Ethan was solving family problems, Greg was doing something else entirely. He bought a new suit and shoes, not forgetting his tie and white shirt. James Victor helped him with that. He had just enough savings for such purchases. Grandpa had also hired an expensive cab so that Greg could pick up Emily and the kids from the hospital. Greg did not count on reciprocity and understanding, just decided to take a risk and did what he had to do, arrested for fraud Michael. When Emily saw the former drifter in his dress suit, she couldn't hold back her tears. All this time, all she could think about was who would pick her up from the maternity ward against all the gossip and gossip. "Thank you, Greg. That's so touching," Emily said, sobbing, and handed him one of the babies. In turn, the midwives and nurses immediately supported the action with thunderous applause, bringing tears to Greg's eyes and a sense of triple responsibility. He headed for the car, knowing that his life had taken a new turn, one that would take him to the registry office with Emily in 6 months. But now Greg no longer considered himself a passive observer and looked forward to the future with confidence, smiling at her with all his 32 teeth. Ashley struggled to open her eyes. She touched her head. The infernal pain was literally tearing her to pieces. There was a strange sour taste in her mouth. She tried to pull herself up, but her hand hit something leathery and cool. She pulled herself up and saw that she was in a spacious limousine. Looking around, Ashley realized that there was no one else in the car except her and the driver, who was sitting silently behind the wheel. "Who are you? Pull over. I'll call my father and he'll bury you right now." She panicked, searching the darkness of the seat for her purse to grab her phone, but there was nothing around. The chauffeur looked strangely in the mirror and grinned. "What's the use of calling? We've already arrived. The order is to take you to the registry office." He slowed down at the entrance. The driver got out of the car and, opening the back door, gave her a hand. "Please, they're waiting inside." Ashley didn't understand anything. Everything was happening as if in a dream. She tried to remember how she had gotten into the car, but her mind was a blur, deciding that it was a joke, and some of her friends once again decided to sign without warning. She walked unconfidently into the Palace of Marriage, passing by a huge full-wall mirror in the foyer. She decided to fix her hair, and at that moment, seeing her reflection, she stood like a stumbling block. Thoughts that she was invited as a guest vanished at once. In the mirror, she was looking at a natural bride in a gorgeous wedding dress with a little disheveled jewelry in her hair of small stones and flowers. Being in some semi-consciousness, she still ran her hand through her hair and slowly turned and walked towards the voices coming from somewhere. Every step she took up the wide white marble staircase seemed like an eternity. Once again, she tried to remember something of the last hours of her life, but there was nothing in her head at that moment except noise and a slight dizziness. Deciding that she had to figure out what had happened anyway, Ashley walked more determinedly into the hall, taking hold of the carved doorknob. She hesitated. For a moment, she was afraid. It seemed as if by taking another step, she could fall into the lair of terrible beasts or make an irreparable mistake. Grinning at her thoughts, Ashley stepped forward with determination. Light fools, with bright lights and the huge number of guests dressed in expensive outfits, made her squeeze her eyes shut. After standing there for a couple minutes with her eyes covered, she timidly lowered her hands, and the first thing she saw was the smiling faces of her father and stepmother. Her father was, as always, impeccable in his tuxedo and bow tie. Her stepmother, in a shining floor-length dress that sat perfectly on her figure, looked like from the cover of a fashion magazine. In her ears and on her chest glittered the diamonds she loved so much that cost no less than the whole registry office. At that moment, a familiar and annoying voice sounded into the microphone. "Olivia, my love, you're finally here. Ashley's been waiting for you. Gentlemen, I think we're good to go." Now that the bride has arrived, Ashley turned and saw Ethan, the son of her father's companion. The boy smiled wryly, letting her know that their last argument hadn't ended in his favor. Ashley remembered how recently they'd been in the same company. And Ethan, having had a few drinks, had enough of this nonsense. If our fathers decided to merge the business, then so be it. Like it or not, you're going to be my wife soon. You'll see in a month or so you'll be mine. At that moment, he even tried to kiss her, as if to confirm the almost fait accompli. But despite her education and patience, Ashley couldn't stand it and sent him off. They never saw each other again after that time. But that was not the end of their marriage. Henry, Ashley's father, had dreamed of marrying her to Ethan, not wanting anyone else to marry his only daughter. Her father kept saying that she should take a closer look at Ethan and try to develop a relationship with him. Lately, though, she had begun to realize that her father cared more about bringing the business and their families together than her personal happiness. Each time such conversations with her father ended with Laura running off to her room and slamming the door loudly, letting him know that the subject was closed to her. In the hall, Henry, catching his daughter's angry look, hurried over to her and, changing his smile to a pleading look, spoke softly. "Daughter, I'm sorry. It's all for your own good. I'll try to explain it to you later. In the meantime, trust that it's best for everyone." He kissed his daughter, gave her his hand in a gallant manner, and led her to the man she was to consider her fiancé. At that moment, Ashley, surprising herself, made the decision to obey her father. There was something in his voice that made it clear that this was a very hard step for him, but it turned out to be not all unpleasant surprises. Thanks to the representative of the registry office ready to hold a solemn marriage ceremony, a handsome man from the witnesses. Ashley couldn't believe it, but near the witness, whom she didn't even know, stood her best friend Jennifer. At this point, the bride began to remember everything. Just in the morning, her friend had called to say that she was getting married in a hurry. She was in a position, she begged her to go and pick out a dress. Ashley remembered everything from that morning. They'd met, even gone to a few salons. She wondered where her friend had gotten the money for such expensive bridal boutiques. Jennifer worked as a manager at the travel agency that Ashley had once used to book her trip. That they became very close, and for several years now they had been talking like best friends. When asked about money, Jennifer waved off the question, saying that her fiancé was making good money at his freelance work, and he'd gotten some kind of inheritance. It was all said so convincingly that Ashley didn't even have any doubts. After going to several bridal salons, Jennifer, citing fatigue, saying that it was hard to be in the position, began to beg to try on her favorite dress instead. Ashley gave in to her friend this time. When the corset was tightened, Jennifer cried out enthusiastically, "Awesome. I'm totally taking it, but I could use some flowers or beads, some hair and shoes. We're the same size anyway." Ashley replied, "No, please tell me." Ashley, standing in the middle of the hall, remembered that she was very uncomfortable with the whole thing, but she couldn't say no to a friend, especially one who was pregnant, so she agreed. "Thank you so much. You helped me out. Let me pour you some water for that. Sorry, I'll have champagne later." Jennifer handed her a glass of water. After drinking it, Ashley didn't remember anything else until she woke up in the car. Now this same friend, Jennifer, trying not to look the bride in the eye, was drinking champagne with a witness and trying her best to flirt with him. Ashley, pulling her hand out of her father's palm, walked right up to her friend and, holding back her emotions, "Step, how could you? You're my best friend. I trusted you in everything, shared everything with you." But Jennifer was surprisingly not confused, but only said in a near whisper, "What could I do? Your father started this whole dress plan and said if I didn't help, I'd be out of a job. You know the connections he has. I agreed to do it. After all, unlike you, I don't have rich parents and I don't have a fiancé like that either. I'm sorry, but before the birth, Ashley, Ethan is a normal guy. His parents have a business several times the size of yours. Anyone would run for him." Ashley looked her straight in the eye and replied angrily, "Not just anyone. Thank you. My friend arranged my happiness too. You can arrange yours." She turned around and, seeing this crowd of local nobles smiling falsely at each other, holding back tears, she sprinted out of the hall. The last thing she heard were her stepmother's words, "It's okay, but it's okay." This is a very important step for any girl to take. Let Ashley get her thoughts together. In the meantime, please raise a glass to us, to our parents, so to speak. Ashley was ready to go back into the auditorium and nail that bitch. How could she even consider herself one of her parents? Ashley didn't remember her mom. Her dad said she died in childbirth. Melissa, our stepmother, had made an unforgettable mark on her life by coming into the family when Laura was about 5. She especially tried her best to get everything she could out of her father. She lived in her own pleasure, went to beauty salons, fitness clubs, went abroad on vacation, mostly without her dad. And taking Laura with her was out of the question. There was not a single time that when Laura was sick as a child, Melissa sat by her crib, took pity, or read a story. All that the girl remembered was sorry, not before you, very busy. And at best, lie down. I'll be right there. After which Laura fell asleep, never having waited for the promised. Now she was sitting in a beautiful rubber chair in the foyer of the registry office, and tears were running down her cheeks. She thought only of one thing, that if her mother were alive, she would not have hurt her. Her father, having married her stepmother, was getting farther and farther away every year. If Laura hadn't realized it when she was a child, then as a teenager, they grew farther apart with each passing year. As president of a huge corporation, Henry had spoiled Laura at first, never refusing her anything. But when Melissa came along, he spent less and less time with his daughter. In recent years, their relationship hadn't been going well at all. Ashley felt as if her father had traded her for Melissa, and she tried to do everything to spite him. She spent all the money her father gave her left and right, even if she didn't need it all. A couple times her dad even put a limit on her cards, but then he'd back off pretty quickly and everything would go back to normal. Sometimes Ashley even felt like her dad was trying to buy her off, so he wouldn't interfere with her relationship with her stepmother. But at the same time, she knew her father would always be there for her when she needed. Ashley wiped her eyes and exclaimed silently, thinking that she was probably wrong. Dad is the only person on the entire planet who is family. He probably did wish her well. She had put up with his nerves for so long without trying to understand. It was only now that she thought about the fact that her father had changed a lot lately. She didn't even wonder why. After sitting in the semi-darkness for a while longer, Jessica decided to go back into the hall after all and try to talk to her dad. It was as if nothing had happened, and the guests from somewhere else were still there. And it seemed to Laura that in a little while the hall would be overcrowded. It was only now that she noticed that everything had been arranged to perfection. Arches, angels walking around the hall, a huge number of flowers, and more correspondence arriving every minute. A few even tried to interview her. But realizing that it was useless, they shifted all their attention to the groom. Ethan, however, was only too happy to do so. He trumpeted his love for Laura left and right, and she noted that he would make a good actor. It was believable enough, and in another case she might have believed it, but not in this moment. Taking a moment, Ethan walked over to her and putting his arm around her shoulders, said quietly, "Well, bride, I told you we'd get married. Just one more hour and you'll be legally wed." Feeling that Laura wanted to break free and leave, he squeezed her hand painfully and coming closer, whispered in her ear, "I don't advise you to make a move. You better smile. It's not you I want. It's your father's family business. You know that your father is on the verge of bankruptcy, and only a merger of our empires, so to speak, can save your family. So I'm waiting, my future wife," or rather, a couple minutes later, a very real wife. "Thank you for saving us from poverty, and of course, breakfast in bed." He, as if nothing had happened, smiling, went back to the correspondence, and the bride looked at her father confusedly. He really did look as if he had aged lately. Olivia hadn't noticed it at all. Only now she realized why her father had been absent from work all day and always came back after midnight very tired. Ashley could see why he was often up at night, smoking nervously in his office, studying and calculating. She walked over determinedly and asked quietly, "Do you really need this wedding so much? Will it be able to help you?" In response, Henry lowered his eyes and also said quietly, "I'm sorry, daughter, I'm sorry if you can." Ashley had already realized only a few people knew about her wedding reception, the ones who had set up this plot. So she decided, since her father needed her so much, she would get married. Walking over to the groom, Ashley took him under her arm and whispered, "Consider it yours for tonight. But there can be no wedding night and no breakfast in bed. I'll talk to my father later." Ethan smirked and replied, "Well, we'll see about that." From all that had happened, she concluded that Dad needed her marriage to Ethan for some reason, so she decided not to dishonor him by running away and accept everything as necessary. With rings, ceremony was held according to all canons, with rings and Mendelssohn's waltz. Journalists tried to cover the event from every angle. Ashley already imagined that the next morning the covers of almost all local publications would be full of their joint photos, but that didn't make her happy. She sat through most of the evening as if the event had nothing to do with her. The groom, on the contrary, was having fun in the circle of his friends and occasionally, as if mocking, winked at her. "Have fun, you're like a funeral," she heard her father's voice behind her. Henry walked over to their table, sat down in the chair next to them and spoke. "I know you're very angry about all this, but I had no other choice. I can't keep quiet any longer. Come on, let's go outside and talk." Without asking any questions, Jessica got up and followed him. She sensed that her father needed to talk, and she wanted to get to the bottom of it. They went down to the first floor of the restaurant where they were celebrating the wedding and sat on the big couch in the foyer by the window. "Ashley, I hid it for a long time. I didn't want to upset you. Did you think there was some mistake? But now I know for sure there is no mistake. I'm seriously ill. The doctors have double-checked it several times, but there's almost no chance. Business, on the other hand, needs a steady hand. So I thought, while you're still too young to make the mistake of marrying a rogue, our family business could fall apart. And Ethan's got a good grip. He's good at business. His brothers Jason and a few others have been on board for years. Jason's been suggesting a merger of our corporations for a long time. I finally agreed." Henry fell silent and, taking a pill from his inside jacket pocket, placed it under his tongue with a trembling hand. "Daddy, are you sick?" Ashley asked fearfully, smiling sadly. Henry took her hand in his. "I'm fine. I feel bad a lot now, but I'm used to it. Listen, Ethan's a good guy. He's just a little spoiled, but I think once he marries you, he'll grow up quickly and take charge." Ashley had to be sure that when her father died, she wouldn't be poor. Her marriage could save their business and therefore her. At this point, Ashley couldn't tell if she fully believed her father, but the deed was done and she was now the legal spouse of this spoiled rich man. She wanted to believe that the marriage was really necessary for her father, and that was the only thing that could justify her crazy marriage. Gently releasing her hand from her father's arm, she looked him in the eye and, rising from the sofa, "Let's go to the hall, Daddy. But know this, if it hadn't been for you, I would never have married that bastard. To me, it's nothing but a sham marriage. As you say, to save our business, but nothing more. And the first chance I get, I'll happily divorce him. And nothing can stop me now." Play returned to the hall, where the guests were enjoying themselves. No one even noticed that the bride was not there all this time. To her surprise, the newly married husband immediately came to her and, putting his arm around her waist, whispered in her ear, "Where have you been, my dear? I've already missed you. Although, judging by the face of your father and yours, I realize that you were not absent for nothing. I hope he was able to explain to you that I'm not the one who needs you. You probably have to pretend to be the perfect spouse so you won't be penniless." At that moment, the heated guests began to shout bitter, under the joyful cries of the host. Before Laura even had time to realize it, Ethan had pulled her to him and nestled his lips against hers. He held her so tightly that there was no way to pull away. When the cries died down, Ashley was able to free herself, and she grinned through gritted teeth, giving him the gentle smile of a loving lion. "Don't you dare do that again. If I agreed to this marriage, it doesn't change anything for you. I hated you, and I still hate you. And the fact that I have to live under the same roof with you for this circus is a sham. There's no wedding night or marital idyll waiting for you. Get it through your head." Ethan grinned and pulled her to the dance floor, where a slow song was playing. Ashley knew he was mocking her, but she clenched her teeth and held on through the wedding feast, realizing that she'd agreed to it. Ethan's parents had given them a spacious 2-bedroom apartment right in the center of town, promising to help them build a house. It was as if they believed in the seriousness of this registration and even said something about grandchildren, although Laura allowed for the idea that they might not have known about how she had been sedated and cunningly forced to marry their son because Jennifer, after drinking a lot of champagne and trying to make up, "Don't worry about how you got here. Only Ethan, me and your father know. Melissa's your stepmother though, Olivia too, I think. So it's more fun to look up to Ethan. He's a great guy." But Ashley didn't care how she ended up at the registry office. For her, the outcome was sad. Now she had to, at least until she figured out what was wrong with her father, pretend to be happily married in public. After all, already the whole town was discussing their marriage. Finding herself in the perfect abandoned apartment after the wedding, Ashley decided to set the record straight right from the doorstep. "So, my dear husband," Olivia began in a belligerent tone as she looked around the new apartment. And then she continued, "Now you're going to show me my room, where I'm going to live while we're married, and it has to be as far away from yours as possible." And somehow completely calmly immediately answers, "As you say, let's go. Will you be satisfied?" He approached one of the doors. He waited until Ashley came closer and swung it open. Voila, the marital bed was ready. "What's up? Let's go give each other the very duty that a lawful husband and wife should give to each other." Ashley stood at the doorway in confusion. In the middle of the spacious room stood a huge white bed covered with rose petals. A bottle of champagne, a bucket of ice, 2 glasses, and fruit stood on a round table nearby. She only woke up when Ethan gave her a gentle nudge. "Come on in, please, don't be shy, and as they say, get undressed," he said snidely. Ashley turned around and looked him straight in the eye and said, "Try to lay a finger on me, and you'll be distracting your girlfriends with that stuff, even though you're out of the way. I can't see you." Pushing him away, Jessica walked out and opened the door of the next room and saw a small, cozy room. It looked more like the guest room that had been in her father's house. There was nothing extra in the room, but it was also quite cozy. The soft blue curtains were harmonious, matching the color of the sofa upholstery and wallpaper. Besides, the room had a closet with mirrored doors, a round glass table with a bronze lamp in the form of a flying girl, and on the wall opposite hung a small television. As she looked around, Ashley was happy to note that this was just what she needed as a temporary refuge from her spoiled spouse. Only at that moment did she realize that she didn't have any personal belongings with her. There wasn't even anything to change into. But the emotions of the past day and fatigue were stronger than this petty problem, which she immediately put aside for the morning. Ashley opened the closets, happy to find several sets of bed linens, a pillow, and a plaid, taking out only the plaid. She climbed with her feet on the couch and snuggled in, falling asleep right into her dress the minute she did. Ashley slept dreamlessly, not even waking up once. She only got up when the smell of coffee wafted from somewhere. She stretched, smiling happily, but when she saw her wedding dress on, she remembered the nightmare of the previous day. She had to get used to the idea that in the near future, so to speak, not to embarrass her father, she would have to live with her now legal spouse. "And then we can get a divorce." She opened the door quietly. She went out into the corridor and almost immediately heard, "Well, I dreamed that I would get married and get coffee and breakfast in bed, and now I have to cook it myself. I suggest we have a cup of coffee to reconcile and discuss our future married life." Surprisingly, he didn't sound ironic. Ashley agreed, thinking that they really needed to talk. She took a few sips of her drink and said, "You and I have nothing to talk about." If her father didn't want it, Ashley would have left the registry office. Now that the whole town is talking about their marriage, she can't embarrass him. And for a while, alas, she'll have to live in this apartment, pretending to be happily married. Ashley's already picked out a room. When the fuss dies down, she'll file for divorce. "You shouldn't do that," Ethan said sadly. "I really like you, and I like not a bad guy. Maybe something good could come out of our marriage." Ashley jumped up from her chair, almost knocking over the hot drink, and, trying to restrain herself, almost shouted, "Why are you such a great guy?" Not humanly, so to speak, old-fashioned with courtship, kissing the moon did not start our relationship. It is to think, to put sleeping pills and forcefully bring to the registry office. "I won't forgive you or your father for that. All you can do to make it up to me is take me home to get my things. I have to live here now. And of course, I didn't take care of it beforehand. I didn't know it was so easy to get married in someone else's house." Then took her hand and calmly say, "Well, everything. Calm down, finish your coffee. I will now get ready, and we'll go for things. Well, you cannot stand at the stove in a wedding dress." At that moment, he winked slyly, which made Ashley literally freak out and grabbed a small spoon from the table and threw it at the insolent man. Ethan deftly dodged it and laughed, leaving the kitchen, where he returned a minute later with the car keys. At her father's house, Ashley quickly gathered the essentials, not wanting to see her stepmother. A half hour later, she was back in Ethan's car. He glanced at the back seat, where the 2 suitcases the gardener had brought were lying, and grinned. Not much. Not a lot of clothes for a pampered beauty like you. To which she, without thinking, sharply replied, "You're a husband now, so you'll buy everything new." So to speak, in a new life, with new clothes. She immediately turned away and looked out the window, signaling that the conversation was over. All the way to their new place, both of them were silent. When they parked in the lot, Ethan got out of the car, but still silently, he pulled the suitcases out of the back seat and put them on the ground, looking at Ashley in surprise. "What are we sitting around waiting for? Why don't you open the door?" he asked indignantly, fumbling with his keys. Ashley grudgingly got out of the car. She slammed the door with all her might. "Watch it," Ethan shouted at her as he closed the car. He turned the car around and walked toward the driveway. Then, as if remembering something, he turned and with a sweet smile said, "What is it? Take the suitcases, go. You already know the address." Ashley wanted to say what she thought of the bastard, but decided not to make a scene in the street. Lucky for her, the suitcases were on wheels, and she began to roll them up to the house one by one. She saw that Ethan stood defiantly with his hands in his pockets and grinned. At that moment, she was ready to kill the bastard, but again she silently swallowed her resentment. "All right, take advantage of my kindness. Let me carry your bag. Maybe I can change your anger into mercy." Ethan nimbly picked up both suitcases and carried them into the entryway. At that moment, Ashley noticed for the first time how perfect his figure was. It was obvious that Ethan was a regular at the gym as well as the clubs. Ashley shook her head as if to ward off such thoughts and followed. Once in the apartment, she sorted through her things and decided to call her father. It was strange to her that he hadn't even bothered in the past 12 hours. Olivia couldn't get through to her dad, even though Laura had dialed several times. She couldn't get the conversation about the wedding out of her head. She quickly pulled herself together and tried to slip out of the house while her new husband was talking to someone in the next room. 20 minutes later, she was already walking into their company's office. Jessica, her father's secretary, was surprised to see Ashley. "Ashley, hello. You're here? How's your dad feeling?" she asked in a tragic voice. Ashley was confused by the question. She was sure her father was at the office. "Isn't he at work? The last time I saw him was yesterday at the wedding. Did something happen that I don't know about?" Ashley asked back and felt her heart sink. She'd heard from the receptionist that her father had been taken away by ambulance last night. His condition had worsened, and he was in the hospital under the care of doctors. Ashley hailed a cab and rushed there. On the way, she couldn't help thinking that her stepmother hadn't even bothered to tell her. Ashley knew for a fact that when she'd come to get her things in the morning, she'd been in her room at home and hadn't even come out. When she got to the hospital, she went straight to the head of the department. He told her how serious the disease was. She immediately went to her father's room, opening the door. Ashley rushed to the bed where her father lay white as a sheet. "Daddy, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I didn't believe you were serious about the disease," she said, crying. He opened his eyes and faintly said, "What's wrong, baby? I understand yesterday you still did not believe anything. After all, I arranged such a thing. But that's beside the point. My crime against you. There's one more thing I have to tell you that's very important. I love you very much, and you know it, no matter what happens between us. But you're not my family. Give me some water, please." He took a few sips, and from the glass Ashley held out to him, looking at his daughter appreciatively, he continued, "It was a long time ago. I loved a girl and wooed her passionately. Her name was Olivia, your mother. She was choosing one of us at the time, but life worked itself out. This guy got involved in some kind of criminal enterprise. He probably ended up in prison. I don't know how he got in touch with me through his lawyer. He's the one who told me Olivia was pregnant, and the baby was his. He begged me to take care of Olivia and the babies, to put him on my payroll, and in return he gave me the stash of what he and associates had looted, knowing that with their prison records, they wouldn't be out for another 25 years. He was given much less as a first move, but his accomplices were sentenced to a full sentence. I'll be honest with you, I was very happy. Not so much the gold and silver, but I could marry Olivia. I was very fond of that one. And then you were born, Ashley. Olivia died. That's how I became your father, started my own business and raised you. Now it's payback time. And then was shocked at what she heard and quietly asked, and then what happened to him? My biological father. I mean, he's probably been released by now. Didn't he want to find me? At the time, he didn't want to cast a stain on you about his biography. Perhaps he thinks so now, too. I haven't seen him since. Some say he escaped from prison, walked away. And some say that they found his body mauled by bears about 10 years ago. They mauled the poor guy on his way to freedom. Laura listened, tears running down her cheeks. It frightened her to realize that on the whole planet it was like this. She no longer had a single soul mate. She realized, of course, that her father was the one who had raised her. But he too, according to the doctor, might not have lived more than a month. Reaching out, Henry stroked her head and said in a weak voice, "Forgive me, my daughter, if you can. Don't hold a grudge, and no matter what happens to me. Know that I loved and love you very much. Now leave me alone, please. I'm tired." All the way home, Laura thought about what she had heard and couldn't believe it was all happening to her. As the cab pulled up to the house, the phone rang. The hospital said that almost as soon as she left, her father was gone. It was as if he had said his most intimate thing and was relieved. Time rolled past as if in a fog. She looked up at her stepmother and noticed that she hadn't shed a single tear. Melissa showed up like a regular party, only dressed in black. The short dress just above her knees, the hat, her flawless makeup made it hard to believe that she was burying her spouse. It felt like she was even glad it had happened that way. Not wanting to watch what was happening, Ashley decided to take a walk to her mother's grave, which was nearby. As she was walking back, she overheard Melissa and her father-in-law Jason talking quite casually. "I did everything you wanted me to do," her stepmother was saying. "Married that idiot. Don't you know what it's like to sleep with someone you don't love? Fulfilling your every whim, talked him into marrying off his daughter to your son so you could take over the man's business. In return, you promised to leave your wife, said we'd be together forever. It worked out even better than that. Now I'm a widow. We can quite officially get married, and the business merged." Melissa said this quite emotionally, trying to wrap her arms around her father-in-law's neck, and the man pulling her arms away. "Sati, don't rush things. The ground hasn't cooled yet, and you're already ready to wag your tail. And the business, sorry, not yet united. You'll see it through to the end. Then we'll do the hustle." Ashley stood back behind the large tombstones, afraid to move. The fact that she'd buried her father despite his confession was still like that to her. Then there was the fact that her stepmother was in cahoots with her father-in-law, which meant her spouse was involved. Melissa didn't calm down and kept talking to her lawyer. "I'll help you with the business to keep things honest. And you help me get his daughter out of the house so she has no rights to it. After all, when you're widowed anyway, it will all be ours in common, as a family." "Really?" she asked. "Give me a kiss, please. And let's go. There's probably a wake starting already. We need to play the widow role a little more." They kissed for a few more minutes, then walked to the car, and Ashley was left standing at a loss, huddled against an old oak tree, as if trying to get strength from it. How long had she stood like that? She didn't know, but she clearly decided that she would fight to the last for her father's cause by going to the wake after the cemetery. Ashley saw Melissa unashamedly surrounding her late husband's father with care and was ready to tear both of them apart. After returning from the wake, Ashley stayed up all night thinking about how she was going to live her life. In the morning, Ethan woke up usually earlier, seeing her already with hair, makeup in the kitchen. Surprised, he asked, "Where are you going so early? Why don't you make me some coffee, since you're still my wife?" Ashley calmly replied, "You said it. I'm going to work. Starting today, I'll be taking over Dad's business on my own. I guess he didn't pay for my finance degree abroad for nothing," she said as she entered her father's reception area. She was glad to see that the secretary was still the same, and from the threshold she asked, "Barbara, good morning. What's happened? Where did so many new employees come from? After all, in the last few years, coming to see my father, I knew almost everyone by sight." Elfin came closer to her and said it almost in a whisper, "Well, while you were busy with the funeral and your father's illness, Melissa dispersed the old guard in no time, hired only people she liked. They're looking her in the mouth now. Just don't give me away. I have a daughter, raising grandchildren. I need money. I help with my paycheck. Don't worry, Barbara. I'll be taking over my father's business from today, which means no one will fire you while I'm here. Please go and get the team together for about 12 hours somewhere. I will talk about our future work together." Having continued her speech in advance, she spent a long time explaining to the staff the plans for the future, but she could see in her eyes that those whom her stepmother had recruited believed only her. She was confused, not knowing what to do next. At that moment, Petrovna came up to her. That's what her father called the elderly cleaning lady. He always said that she had been working since the founding of their company and knew everything and every... "Ashley, let's step back," she asked timidly. "Sure, you're one of the few people I know here," Ashley replied good-naturedly. "That's the very thing." Petrovna told her all the people Melissa recruited were originally against the owner's daughter. "But I've known you from childhood," grandmother went on to say. "Henry brought you here as a little girl and told you that the Harris would run the business. But I see you have many enemies now. So I thought I'd let you in on a secret I know. He's got something here in his office. He told me in confidence to give it only to you. Maybe something necessary and important." What was Jessica's surprise when inside, hidden behind the book racks from the safe, Olivia found only one photograph. It showed two young, handsome guys standing with a fragile girl between them. On the back were written their names in the ear. Tucking the picture into her pocket, she returned the racks to their original place and almost immediately forgot about it. By lunchtime, her stepmother arrived at the office, surrounded by Ethan and his father. She naively started talking about how she needed more rest, that losing a loved one was a major mental trauma, and it was very difficult to get back to normal afterward. But realizing that this would not change Ashley's fighting spirit, left her alone. For a while, however, every now and then Melissa or Ethan's father would try to find out what she was interested in, offered their help. Alyssa had even been thoughtful enough to make her coffee and bring it to her, offering to chat. Ashley had sensed a strange flavor in the drink, but she hadn't given it much thought. From that day on, she continued to drive to her father's office every morning and tried to get things done. But by evening, it was like she'd been replaced. Ashley didn't want to live. She was tired, and she wanted to howl with loneliness. It wasn't like her, but she couldn't do anything about it, writing it off as psychological trauma. The girl really hoped that soon everything would pass, but everything ended quite unexpectedly. At the end of one of these days, Ashley had a real hysteria. She sobbed through everything that came under her hand and woke up when people in white coats were bending over her. And the stepmother said, "The girl's father is dead. You see, she's not herself anymore. She's doing whatever she wants. You better make her well, and we're willing to pay any amount of money. You know, we don't want any trouble, so her stay is guaranteed to be as far away from the city as possible, so no one will find out." Ashley heard this whole conversation as if through absorbent cotton or a veil. All she could think about was how it was possible that she had gone crazy, because everything that was going on said exactly that. She was given some kind of injection, and Ashley woke up later in the ward of the asylum, which was filled with 10 people who were completely inadequate. She decided to pretend to be sick, even learning to hide the pills in her mouth so she could spit them out after the orderlies left. True, one day one of them, the one who had been looking at her strangely since the first day, whispered, "I understand everything, and I'm ready to help you. You're not crazy. You don't even need to see a doctor. I'll try to organize your escape. But I'll tell you right away, this institution is a paid one, and the security here is quite serious. Just please don't try to do it yourself. Blink your eyes if you agree." Ashley was surprised, but blinked immediately. "That's good. Come on, get to bed. They say the morning is wiser in the evening." That night, Ashley slept until the wee hours of the morning without waking once, as if she felt like she had a guardian angel. A few days later, her benefactor entered the room first thing in the morning and came up to her and said, menacing, "You have an urgent appointment for a procedure. Let's go." Moving closer, he whispered, "Don't be afraid of anything. Come with me." He silently led her out of the ward and discreetly hid her in the car. Taking the laundry to the laundromat, he whispered one last time, "Take care of yourself. You're very pretty. In the pocket of your jacket is my phone number. Always help if I can. As soon as you pass security, my advice to you is to run. They'll be looking for you with dogs. I'll try to cover for you, of course, but it's better to get away as soon as possible." Ashley heeded his advice a couple of kilometers from her private facility, got out from under a bag of stinky hospital underwear and jumped out of the car at one of the corners. Where to go? She didn't understand, but remembering the orderly's admonition, she went to the right. Olivia thought the guy knew the neighborhood and signs, which meant he must have lived here. As soon as Ashley stepped into the woods, a growl sounded from behind the trees. Immediately, Olivia saw wolves coming from all directions, ready to tear their prey apart. "Oh my God," she almost whispered. And then, as fast as she could, she screamed for help. Laura thought her life was over, but at that moment a shot rang out. Behind her, a harsh male voice shouted, "Hey, get out of here." "Found me a victim, too." Ashley turned around and saw a bearded man holding a shotgun. Olivia immediately took a frightened step behind his back and squirmed, waiting for the denouement. As soon as the predators scattered, the stranger offered to help, and they moved deeper into the forest, where they soon found themselves in a clearing. "Listen, it stood a good-sized hut, but this is where I live. Please make yourself at home. You can hang your clothes in the hallway, and your room is to the right," said the stranger. Ashley began to take off her jacket, and suddenly, a photograph slipped out of her pockets. It fell, as if on purpose, at the owner's feet. He picked it up easily from the floor and looked at it for a long time, and suddenly, in a voice trembling with excitement, asked, "Where did you get that picture?" Ashley was stunned. The hermit, who had just seemed so stern, living without fear in the woods, stood looking at the photo and crying. It turned out that one of the three was him as a young man. From his story, Ashley immediately realized it was her biological father. Then they sat in the small kitchen and talked to each other for a long time about their lives. Taking Ashley's hand, her father quietly said, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I really wanted to find your mom and you when I was free, but I decided not to ruin your life after all. It was time for me to come back from the dead. Besides, the statute of limitations on my case is long since expired, so we'll still have a fight on our hands with your newfound family. I'll go into town tomorrow for starters. I have an acquaintance there. He'll help me find a good lawyer, and we'll get your divorce finalized. There are no children, so everything will be in absentia." My father offered to stay with him until the divorce was finalized, and the next morning he left for a whole day in the city. When he came back, he happily said, "That's it, we're leaving tomorrow. You will sign all the necessary documents." The lawyer said, "A couple of days, and you'll be a completely free girl again. By the way, you don't have to be afraid of your relatives anymore. I had a talk with them, so to speak. Said if anything ever happens to you again, I'll put them away." The conversation wasn't in such a cultured way, of course, but he smiled for the first time since they'd known each other, and Ashley felt like she was definitely protected now. The divorce had indeed gone through without her involvement, and Ashley was glad that this family of swindlers had not had time to take over the business. Ethan and his father tried to talk her out of the divorce, and when they realized that the decision is unchangeable, literally went mad with anger. Stepmother made plans for a life together with her former father-in-law. They thought they had a rich future, but it turned out that the man never intended to divorce and just used Melissa as a spy and informer in the camp of the enemy. Now that Laura has divorced and taken control of the business, her former father-in-law has sent Melissa away and threatened to lock her up in the same asylum from which Ashley escaped. Ethan Peter, the girl's biological father, sold his house and settled in the city, organized all the necessary documents to return to normal life, and began to help Ashley in everything. He, of course, did not understand much about modern business, but his daughter supported him and calmed him down. She thought that with such diligence and willpower in 6 months, he would understand everything as well as she did. You can see how her father tries to immerse himself in everything and get into every detail. Ashley was also grateful that he'd managed to talk to her family so well that they'd never come her way again. All this time, she hadn't forgotten the orderly from the asylum, the one who'd helped her escape. She wanted to thank him very much, and then one day she did. She called Ashley's voice, realized the Savior's name was Gregory. He was very happy to hear from her and immediately offered to meet her. They spent the evening wandering the streets of the city, telling each other about themselves. It turned out that Gregory was married, but his wife ran away with her lover many years ago and even filed for divorce. At the same time, a young daughter left with Daddy. He spoke enthusiastically about little Emily and then sadly said, "Well, that's what I am, not an enviable belle. Daughter in my arms, and also Mom is very sick. She hasn't gotten up in months. She needs surgery on her spine, which costs a lot of money. Don't think I'm complaining. It's just so easy to talk to you like I've known you for 100 years. Ashley had the exact same feeling. It was like Gregory was her soulmate, like her in many ways and complementary to her. For the first time, she felt light and cozy. She wanted to snuggle up next to him and not let go. From that evening, they began to meet regularly. Gregory introduced Ashley to Emily's daughter. Emily immediately became attached to her and didn't want to part with her, each time tearfully begging her not to leave. Ethan Peter, having met Gregory, immediately approved the choice of his daughter. This is a real man, and it does not matter what kind of wealth he has. The important thing is the soul, and a man who is raising a little girl cannot be a rotten soul. When his father heard about his mother's illness, he said, "Daughter, of course, you have the right to decide for yourself, but I think the man who saved your life is worthy of saving his loved one. Let's go talk to Gregory, get his mom into the hospital, and then I think we can pay for the treatment. Things are looking up. I'm starting to get into it, as you can see. So this sum will not be critical for us." Ashley agreed immediately, noting that her father had really gotten into things quickly. That same day, Olivia surprised Gregory with her and her father's decision. He agreed. "Thank you so much. I will definitely give everything back, though gradually, but I will definitely return it. I just don't want to waste time, of course. The disease is progressing. The main thing is to save my mom, and then I will work and return it." 1 week later, after a successful operation, a small company gathered in the room of Barbara, Gregory's mother. Ethan Peter, holding out a bouquet, said, "Gregory, I could not even think what a beautiful mom you have." And the man had long ago asked to visit. The woman blushed, embarrassed, replied, "What are you talking about? What beauty on a hospital bed?" "Nothing. You'll be dancing soon," Gregory said with a smile and added, "And it's all thanks to these kind people." Again, Emily jumped up to her, hugged her, and exclaimed, "Barbara, you are so kind, so good. I wish I had a mom like you. I'd always listen to you and do everything. Why don't you two get married? They make such a handsome couple." Ethan squinted slyly at Peter. Gregory and Ashley looked at each other, and he said timidly, "I'd love to. Only where's Ashley? Where's me? Just a regular orderly from the asylum." To which the girl came up to him and straight into his eyes quietly said, "You try it. Isn't that the main thing? Will you agree to be my wife?" Gregory asked just as quietly, taking her hand. "Of course I love you, and the most important thing for me is that you will always be close to me," Ashley answered and pressed herself against his chest, smiling. A month later, in a small cozy cafe, quietly, in a family way, celebrated the marriage. And the loudest of all shouted Emily, "Wow, I now have the best mom in the world." The young people smiled happily and kept their eyes on each other. At that moment, Ashley felt completely happy for the first time in a long time, although she had already noticed that there were at least 2 other happy people besides them. Ethan Peter was holding Barbara's hand and whispering something to her while smiling. At that moment, they looked as much in love as their children.
Naomi has always loved to dream. Since childhood, the girl grew up a very gentle nature. She had a wonderful character, and almost always she was hovering somewhere in the clouds. Naomi saw what kind of family she had and wanted to have everything the same. Her beloved husband, her children. "Mom, I'm going to the library," she often said. And indeed, she would go to the library, pick up some women's novel, sit and read it right there. "Daughter, don't you want to go to the movies?" her mother would ask her on weekends. Of course, Naomi liked it very much when she and her mother went out, watched a movie, and then discussed it. If the movie was about love, often, both woman and girl cried, even if there was a happy ending. "Naomi, what do you want to be?" her mother asked her when she was already in high school. "I love children and I want to spend my life with them," she said. "That's wonderful." Her mom approved of her choice. The girl was exemplary. She almost never went out, only sometimes with girls at discos, which were held at school or so, in the yard to sit and chat at the table. There were 4 friends, Naomi, Natalie, Casey, and Nancy. Nobody singled anyone out. They all talked the same way. "Hi." They came by to pick up Naomi one night. "I probably won't go out tonight," Naomi told them, because she wanted to spend the evening with her mom. She said there was a movie on TV that she'd been wanting to see for a long time. Come on, let's go. You'll have time to watch it. The girls kept up with her. Okay, I guess Mom won't be offended. She went to change. Of course, Mom wasn't offended. She understood that the girls are young. They want to go out. When else will they have such an age? And now, when there was only a little bit left till the end of school, it was necessary to give her daughter some freedom. Well, are we going to the disco right away? Nancy asked everyone. Where else would you like to go? Naomi turned to her. Don't you know that there is a new cafe in our town where there are different desserts and ice cream? We can go there. Looked at her friend's watch. Sure, let's go. I haven't been there, Naomi said, and thought to herself that her mother usually found out that there was something new in town, and they went there. The girls came to the cafe, sat down at a table, ordered ice cream, sat enjoying the cold dessert. At this moment, no one even thought how their lives would turn out, what would happen. But for Naomi, this day was fateful. At some point, the bell above the door jingled. Everyone turned their attention there. A group of guys entered the room. One was tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Naomi herself doesn't know why she paid attention to him then, but she really liked the guy. The guys didn't pay any attention to the girls. They walked over, sat down at a table, and began to discuss some topics of their own. Naomi nudged Nancy in the side. What? Turned to her. Where the hell are you? The girls laughed. Did you see the guys who just came in? Naomi pointed to the table where the young men were sitting with her eyes. And what? They asked. That tall one over there. The girl spoke in a half whisper. Did you like him? All the others who sat with Naomi at the table were smiling. Naomi blushed because they had never talked about liking guys before. Maybe they had, but everyone kept quiet. Oh, Naomi, you're kidding. Is it love at first sight? Natalie had already finished her ice cream and was waiting for everyone else to do the same. Why not? Naomi regretted telling the girls anything. All right, everybody, and us sitting here staring at the guys, get up and let's go, Nancy ordered. She was the leader of the group. The girls did get up. Naomi didn't want to leave, in case she never saw him again, but staying here alone wasn't an option either. They went out, headed for the House of Culture, where the disco was held. On the way, they talked about some unimportant little things. Naomi was not here. Yes, she was walking next to her friends, but the tall blonde man did not get out of her head. The girls went inside and almost immediately went dancing. And what was Naomi's surprise when the slow dance started? The young man from the cafe came up to her. Would you like to dance? He asked her. Yes, she was speechless and everything else because she couldn't believe that this was actually happening. He led her to the center of the room. They started dancing. My name is Evan, he told her. I'm Naomi. She wanted to look at him, but she couldn't look up because she was too shy. I noticed you at the cafe, he told her. Yeah, she said, and then she was silent. She was ashamed to admit that she had noticed him in the cafe. She danced and thought to herself that it was really fate that they both noticed each other and liked each other at first sight. As soon as the dance was over, the girls came up to Naomi and started asking questions. Naomi, that's the guy from the cafe, Nancy told her. And you think I didn't notice that? She smiled a little. And what did he tell you? What was his name? They began to pile questions on the girl. Natalie and Casey stood back. They were very curious too. I don't know anything yet. We just danced and met. His name is Evan. He told me that he saw me there too. Naomi told them, and she saw that the guy had come downstairs too, standing there looking at them. Naomi, can I talk to you for a minute? He came up to them. Hi, Nancy said to him. Evan, meet my friends Nancy, Natalie, and Casey, said the girl, and for some reason she blushed again. She didn't realize what was happening to her. It was the first time she had been like this. Naomi began to carry over to herself all the things she had read in women's novels. There she was, so modest, quiet, docile, and he would take her by the hand and lead her through life. That's what she thought as the guy walked her home that evening. Why haven't I seen you anywhere before? Evan asked her as they approached her house. I don't know, she answered. She didn't want to go home. She wanted to spend some more time with him. But she realized that if it was real, if it was true, they would see each other again tomorrow and maybe start talking. Let's meet tomorrow, as if Evan had read her mind. Sure, I'm free after school. Come to the courtyard, she told him. They agreed, said goodbye, and the girl went home. How was the walk? her mom asked her. Great. Naomi was shining like a new dollar. Tell me what happened. What happened? I haven't seen you so happy for a long time. Mom guessed that her daughter had something good. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think I fell in love. Clasped my hands in a lock, stood looking at Naomi's mom. Her face was smiling from ear to ear. Oh, daughter, be careful, don't get burned, her mom told her. Of course, I don't know yet, but I think Evan is nice. Naomi had always been like that. Whatever happened in her life, she always thought several steps ahead, and now she wanted everything to be as it was in her dreams. The next day they met. At first, when she approached him, he took her hands and for a few minutes they just stood looking at each other, smiling. You have such good energy, Evan told her then. And you have. She didn't know what to say to that, so she said so. You know what, I think we should start dating. Evan was calm, and the fact that they knew each other so little didn't bother him in the slightest. We could try, she replied, and inside she was jubilant. It had to be that day, to go to the cafe where he was. And then he came to the disco. Is that what happens in life? Naomi used to think that only in love novels they wrote like that, in books or something, but it was impossible. From that moment on, the guys started dating. Naomi introduced Evan to her parents right away. After a while, Evan introduced her to his mom. Now every night they met, went for walks, went somewhere, both of them told each other different stories. I'm leaving soon, Naomi told him one day. Where? He didn't understand. To study. She laughed back. He looked so scared. You scared him. He waved his hand at her. I think that this separation will not affect our relationship with you, the girl asked him. You know, I could come with you, he said after a short pause. That would be perfect, she smiled. After receiving her diploma, Naomi immediately applied to the institute where she wanted to go, got accepted, and first checked into the dormitory. Evan promised that when he solved all his questions, he would come to her, and then they would think about a rented apartment. Since the girl had planned to study here for a long time, she liked it, and she wanted to do it. She wasn't lazy, even when Evan came to visit during the week. They would walk around a bit so that she would have time to do whatever assignments were set. Then the young man said that he could finally stay and they could try to start living together. Naomi was both so pleased by this situation and a little saddened. She realized that if she started living an adult life, she would have less time to study, but she couldn't say no because she really liked this man. Wow, that's a lot of work, Evan told her. She had already completed 3 years of school, and she had a practicum ahead of her. Naomi could not decide where she would go, either to her hometown or here, where she had already been offered a place. Of course, in the native walls would be very good, but since Evan had already got a job here, she thought that another separation was not necessary in her life. So she agreed to do her internship here in this city. You decided to stay here after all, the young man told her. Yes, what's the point of going back and forth? Now I'll get an internship, then I'll graduate, and maybe I'll get a job here too, Naomi said. When Naomi came to the school, she could not put it into words how much she liked it here, how much she liked all these children. She had memorized each one during the time that practice was going on. Naomi managed not only to make friends with these children, but also to learn a little about each one, what kind of character each one had and what kind of approach each one needed. When she entered the 4th year, she didn't want to think about anything else, only about going to work. She lived her studies and knew that everything would work out for her. When the girl was already in the 5th year, her mother suddenly came to visit her. She did this very rarely, but here the daughter saw that the woman did not have everything in order. Mommy, what happened? She hugged her, and at that moment she did not hold back and cried. It turned out that Naomi's father had left her for another woman. Can you imagine? Her mother looked at her with tearful eyes. How is this possible? You always had an exemplary family, sat Naomi on a chair and took her hands on her head. I myself never imagined that I would be alone in my old age, the woman said. She stayed at Evans with Naomi for a few days. In the meantime, the young man decided that while his future mother-in-law was here, he had to propose. He did everything correctly and beautifully. The restaurant, flowers, ring, smiles, and then the main words in Naomi's life. She thought back to her childhood dreams. In them, everything was just as Evan had done now. Oh, children, how happy I am for you, her mother had said. Once Naomi had read a book that described a girl's wedding. It was written that she wore a light white dress, which was tied around her figure, with a hat on her head. And for some reason, she visualized this image in her head so much that she couldn't think of anything else but that. "Darling, how about an ordinary classic dress?" her mother asked her. "No, I want such a dress." She drew a sketch on paper, but they couldn't find it in the stores. Then, while the girl was at school, which she was coming to the end, she passed the state examination, diploma, everything else. Her mother was looking for a seamstress to do what her daughter wanted so much. "Honey, look what I have here," stood the woman at the closet when her daughter returned from her studies. Almost everything was already turned in. There was only a little left. "Well, show me," Naomi guessed, but she had no idea it would really be so beautiful. "Close your eyes," her mother smiled. Naomi closed her eyes with her hands. She waited. She heard the closet door creak open. She took her hands away. She watched and remained silent. "Mom," she finally exhaled and walked over to her. "Everything for you, my dear." The woman realized that her daughter liked everything. When Evan came home in the evening, the bride-to-be decided not to show him the update and not to tell him, so that it would be a surprise later. They had dinner, agreed that the application would be filed now, and the wedding would be held at the end of the summer. Naomi wanted to get a job by then, and she believed that everything would work out. "As you say," the young man pressed her to himself. Mom decided to stay with the young people. She wanted to help them in everything, and as soon as they signed to leave. So far, everything in the girl's life was as she once dreamed. Study was behind her. Her beloved was near. Only happiness and nothing else. "Hello," she came to school. "Good afternoon," the headmistress looked at her. "I would like to get a job with you." Naomi smiled because she and this woman had known each other for a long time. When the girl was interning, Beatty herself had told her that she was always welcome here. Of course, Naomi, she extended her hand and took a folder with documents. The girl was sure that she would succeed. There was not a single doubt. She was expected to work in September, and now she could get married. "Nancy, hi," Naomi called her friend. Since they'd been separated, they'd seen each other very rarely. "A friend, finally," she said. "I want to invite you to the wedding," Naomi said, and listened to her friend's reaction. "Are you going to call Natalie and Casey yourself, or should I?" Nancy asked. "No, I'll do it myself," smiled the girl. "Okay, see you later then," said the friend, and they said goodbye. After that, Evan booked the restaurant. Everything was ready. There weren't very many people at the wedding, but it was fun. Evan and Naomi were happy. Mom went home. She hated it so much, but she couldn't stay with the kids all the time, could she? "Beloved, now we have to think about the babies." Evan hugged her, burrowed into her hair and whispered. "Beloved, wait a little while. I have to do some work," she said. "Yes, of course," he kissed her. The work was not easy. At first, Naomi, when she started working, had been kind, making concessions to everyone. But with the children she worked with, she had to be strict with them because they could be sassy. If you were nice to them, they didn't listen, they behaved badly. Naomi began to develop a strong character, a strong voice, and though she cried a lot in the evenings, she liked working at the school. "Why do you go there if you cry afterwards?" Evan said irritably. He couldn't see his wife suffering. "No, I like everything. It's just emotions I can't let out." She lifted her face and smiled. "I see, it'll get you through school." Her husband didn't like the way things were going. 3 years passed. Naomi still hadn't talked about having kids, even though Evan really wanted to. "Well, wait a little longer," she told him. "How many can you do? Look at yourself." "With your school became nervous, twitchy," he told her reproachfully. "Darling, don't be nervous." She sat up to him. "Good." He kissed his wife on the neck. At work, the girl was praised, and after 7 years of her work, the director summoned her to her office. "Hello," walked an excited Naomi into her office. "Have a seat." The woman showed her to a chair. The young teacher was worried. "Naomi, would you like to be a head teacher?" the principal asked. "What?" The girl didn't expect to hear that. "Why you work? You have all the indicators on top." Saw Naomi that in the hands of the headmistress again all her documents. Good, it meant a promotion, which meant she was doing a good job. Back home today, she returned in high spirits. She and Evan had had a strained relationship for about 6 months. He could stay late at work, go out with his friends, and more. The only complaint he had with his wife was that she was exhausted and worked too hard. Nauman hoped that it was just a crisis in the family life, and that soon everything would pass and it would be like before. "Evan, I'm home." She entered the apartment, but the answer was silence, as usual lately. The girl went to the kitchen. She put the kettle on, made a light salad, sat down at the table. After that, she picked up the phone to call her husband. When she opened the list of recent calls, she grinned. Why is it like this, she asked herself. Before, when she first wrote down her future husband's number, she had him listed as her favorite, then changed her phone and listed Ivan with just a name. But now the screen was simply labeled husband. Where had it all gone? Where was this great love of theirs? At that moment, he answered her. "Honey, where are you?" Naomi asked him. "And you?" "I'm at home." I wanted to cry. "And I'm at work," he said, because a couple of years ago, he used to come and wait for her, cook dinner, buy flowers, and his wife was gone. When he called, she said she was at work. "It's late." She looked at her watch. And what a lie had piled up, he lied to her. "Come, we need to talk," she asked. But he came back when Naomi was already asleep, did something briefly in the kitchen, then came into the bedroom. He took a pillow and a plate and went to sleep in the hall. "Good morning." She passed him when she woke up. "Morning." He squinted against the bright keshi because Naomi had opened the curtains. "We need to have a serious talk." Naomi stood over him. "Good." They walked together to the kitchen for breakfast and coffee. As they sat at the table, she stirred the sugar in her mug and looked at her husband. "Why don't you tell me where you disappear for so long every day?" the wife asked Evan. "You know, at work," he told her. "Okay," she nodded. "And what's the name of your job?" "What started it?" He wanted to leave. "No, we'll talk," as if turning on the teacher girl. "If you don't believe me, it's none of my business," he told her. "Evan, why is everything happening like this? What happened to our family?" She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "And where is it? Our family, show me." "I wanted kids and you didn't. Work, work. So live with your work." He stood up and went to get dressed. "I don't understand." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I'm gone," she heard from the hallway. "Good," sighed the girl. She had to go to work too, so she went to her room, got ready, smiled at herself in the mirror, and left the house. "You don't look so good," her colleague and friend said to her at work. "Yes, my husband's having a little trouble." Naomi didn't want to talk to her. "Okay, when you want to tell her, you'll tell her yourself." She didn't bother her. In the evening, when Naomi was home, it was empty again. She did everything as usual. She had to do a little work today. She sat at the table until the night before, but Evan never showed up. No matter how many times the girl called him, he was unavailable. She went to bed, and in the morning she found that he was still gone. The phone was silent too. So 3 days passed. Naomi went to work, came home, where there was still no one. "Listen, maybe you should file a search warrant," her friend advised her. "No, you what? And if he is just at friends or women, then everyone will laugh." Naomi did not want to do it. "Fine, do what you want." Her friend didn't insist on anything. Yeah, Naomi just nodded. "Listen, we want to go to a cafe this weekend. Will you come with us?" asked her friend. "Oh, what are you? What about?" After these words, she was silent. She even felt funny. "Who live in?" The woman realized what she wanted to say. "Yeah," Naomi shook her head. "Forget about him, he'll be back now. Give him a beating, pack his things, and put him out on the street," she said. "Okay, we'll deal with it ourselves." She went to her room, and a few hours later she headed home. She walked into the apartment, saw the lights on, went into the room. Evan was sitting on the couch. "Hi," Naomi said hello to him in a stern voice, showing that she was about to have a serious conversation. Well, he looked at her. "Where have you been?" She didn't sit down. "Where I was. I'm not there anymore," grinned Evan. "I see, so you won't talk." She walked to the window. "Why not? I was with a woman." He stopped talking. "What?" She turned sharply. Naomi had assumed it, but to have it like this, he himself directly told her about it. She couldn't believe it. What she heard, "I've been seeing a woman for months now. Now she seems to be expecting a baby, my baby." He emphasized the last words in his voice. Good, it became so hurtful that it seemed she was about to suffocate. She wanted to cry, but there were no tears, only a spasm squeezed her throat. Naomi went to the bedroom. She dialed the number of Ariana, the same friend and colleague from school. "What's wrong?" She picked up the phone. "Can I come over?" Naomi asked quickly. Of course, she never said no to a friend. Naomi came, told her everything, and then the tears did not wait. The way she was crying now, she had never cried before. "That's it, friend. You're definitely coming with us this weekend. You need to relax," summed up her friend. Good, Naomi didn't know what she should even do now. After work the next day, she went home again. Even though she was afraid to see Evan there was nothing to do. But he wasn't there as usual, so she opened her closet and looked at what she had to wear to go out with the girls tomorrow night. A cocktail dress was chosen, shoes. She promised Ariana that she would be beautiful and happy that day. Her husband never showed up, and on Saturday, after working all day, the girlfriends got together in the evening. "Shall we have a rest?" Ariana asked. Of course, she was exaggerating. They went to a cafe, ordered something to eat, and a glass of champagne. Everything decent. When it was late, Naomi went home. "Let's stay a little longer. Look how much fun the music is," Ariana told her. "No, I'll go." Naomi didn't want to be here anymore. She would have stayed a little longer, but her friend was always distracted by her other two friends, and Naomi wasn't interested. "Okay, can you walk alone?" Ariana asked. "Sure," the girl smiled back at her. She left the cafe, did not walk a few meters, hit the heel in the grate, which was in the ground, and almost fell. Oops, she bent her foot unnaturally. "How come? Not carefully." Some man came up to her. "Thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't know what Naomi was apologizing for." "Come on, I'll walk you out." He took her under his arm. "No need, I'll do it." She looked. There was a bench up ahead. "It's no trouble at all," the stranger mumbled. They walked a little deeper into the park and sat down on a bench. "Thank you," Naomi thought. Her house is just the other way around. "It's okay," he smiled. Only now did the girl realize that champagne they'd been drinking the evening before had given her a bit of a headache. Before that, she had thought everything was fine. "Would you like some ice cream?" The man sitting next to her suddenly asked her. Come on, Naomi thought. Why is it that her husband is allowed to find new women, while she can't even meet anyone in the park? "Here, take it." He took out a briquette from the bag. "Why don't you eat it yourself?" She took a bite of the already melting treat. "I can't. I went to the dentist this afternoon," he smiled. "Do you live in the neighborhood?" Naomi asked him. "No, I came here specifically to get my teeth fixed," he answered her. Their conversation seemed to be about nothing. In this neighborhood, the girl knew that they had the only clinic in town that was praised. Yes, he turned to her, looked at her and smiled. "What?" She didn't understand. "You got a little dirty." He moved closer to her, wanting to remove the remains of the ice cream that was over her lip. "What are you doing?" She looked at the stranger. His face was very close. "What beautiful eyes you have," he said, and at that moment he started kissing her on the lips. Naomi herself did not know what was wrong with her at that moment, always so decent and correct. Today she just gave in to a total stranger. He kissed her while unbuttoning her dress. She didn't make a sound. It just felt good. After it was over, the girl quickly got up and walked. "What have I done? What a fool." She blamed herself. "Nothing, Vanechka, to spite you. Why is it possible for some people and some not?" She came home and immediately hid in the bathroom. She wanted to wash it all away, but as the shower water poured over her, she remembered the stranger's touch, and her stomach felt heavy. Naomi shook her head, pushing the thoughts away. After that, she went to sleep. When the girl woke up in the morning, her head was cracking so hard that it felt like it was going to split. "Yes, I guess I only felt like I had a couple of drinks," Naomi said to herself, and looked in the mirror. At that moment, she remembered what had happened after she had gone home, her face flooded with color. Good thing it was a stranger and they would never, ever meet again. Today was Sunday, which meant no need to go anywhere. The girl decided to spend the whole day at home. She went to wash her face, looked at herself again, and immediately the memories of yesterday popped up in her mind. What the hell is this? She couldn't understand how she'd even gone for it. She washed her face, ate breakfast. Evan was still gone, but Naomi wasn't thinking about him today. She got comfortable on the couch, turned on the TV. There was nothing interesting there. Then the girl decided to call her friend to ask how they ended last night. At that moment, she remembered about herself again. When she imagined it, it was so embarrassing, and suddenly someone saw. But she pushed it away again and dialed Ariana's number. "Hi, how was the party last night?" she asked her friend. "Oh, and don't ask, my head hurts. I'm still in bed," she answered. "I see. Take a pill, then I'll call you later," Naomi told her and hung up. Then she got up. She decided to do a little cleaning. The apartment was already clean. She just needed to dust. And that she did. She thought she should make dinner. She went to the kitchen. Naomi was waiting for something, but she didn't realize it. When it was far after lunch, she sat down in front of the TV again. It was starting some love series. She loved it. At the same time, the girl opened a news feed on the internet to find out what was going on in their city. This page was very popular and convenient. You always know what events and where they happened. What is this? She saw a picture of their neighborhood, and then there was the news text. It said that yesterday a man came to the dentist's office and was diagnosed with HIV. Everyone who had been to the dentist's office that day should be tested immediately to rule out any cases of the disease. Jesus. Naomi clamped her hand over her mouth. She remembered the stranger's words that he had come specifically to have his teeth treated. Why didn't he treat them in his city? What to do? After that, the girl had a panic attack. She thought that if the school found out something, and they were soon to have a medical examination, it would be a disgrace for the whole town. And what next? How to live with all this? Naomi got through the day, and the next day she went to the principal's office first thing in the morning. "I want to quit," she said from the doorstep. She didn't understand. She looked at the employee confused. "What is not clear? I divorced my husband. I want to leave," said the girl so quickly, as if something afraid. "Naomi, calm down, sit down. Let's talk." Betty began to speak calmly. "I'm fine. I just want to get out of here as soon as possible," she said. "Okay, but maybe you can work for a month?" asked the principal. "There are 2 weeks till the end of the year. I'll finish them. I won't work anymore," the girl said firmly. "Okay." The one gave her a sheet and a pen for Naomi to write a statement. It was necessary to finish all the things. Naomi was afraid to meet Ariana. She didn't want to tell anyone anything, because even the closest ones could spread gossip. Now she would come straight to the first class, and as soon as the bell rang from the last class, she would leave immediately. "Girlfriend, what's wrong with you? Where are you? Betty said you were leaving?" Ariana called her. "Yeah, sorry, I don't have time." She was just dropping the call. It was a few days before the end of the furlough period, and Evan still hadn't come home once. No matter how many times Naomi called him, he either didn't answer or just dropped the call. Then his wife decided to leave him a letter in which she wrote that she was not angry with him and wished him happiness, and also that he himself filed for divorce. She does not mind, and let them with a new girl, everything will be fine. The girl put the paper on the table. After that, she went to bed. The next day she was leaving. "Mom, hi," she came home. "Naomi?" She was surprised. Her daughter never came without calling. "Why are you so surprised? I can't come home already?" She smiled naively. "No, it's okay. Come in," took her back the woman. Before this, the daughter had not told her mother what was going on in their family. But now, when they were sitting in the kitchen, she decided to tell her everything. "Mommy, I have to leave," she told her as they sat at the table drinking tea. "I don't understand what happened. Everything was fine with you." The woman was surprised. "Evan found someone else. They are expecting a child, and I can't cope with this situation. I decided to go away." Tears rolled from my eyes. Yes, there might have been some truth to it, but that wasn't why Naomi was crying. She would never stay here, and if the truth became known, she would be ashamed of herself in front of her mother. "Oh my God, my little girl." Her mom hugged her and cried too. "Listen, you remember Aunt Cindy, who lives somewhere in the South?" she asked her daughter. "Well," she nodded. "Maybe I'll go to her place. We used to go there a lot," Naomi suggested. "I don't even know. We haven't talked in so many years," the woman said. "All right, I need the sea air and distance from society now," she lied. "Well, maybe I should come with you," the mother asked. "No, you'll be fine. I'll stay with you for a couple of days and then I'll be on my way," Naomi said in a businesslike manner. Everything was so fast and amazing, not only for the mother, but also for the girl herself. Now all the evenings while she was here, they would get together with her mother, and as they had done long ago, they would watch different movies and then discuss them. The mother, in this way, wanted to distract her daughter from bad thoughts. "Don't be bored, I'll be there soon," Naomi hugged her, thinking that it might not be true. "Good, and you there as you get settled, be sure to call," cried and kissed her woman. Naomi went to the station, got on the train, drove, looked out the window, and thought that this was not the life she had dreamed of. Some women sat next to her and they chatted and laughed. And here she was. The last time she had been here was when she was still in school. For some reason, the village had seemed big to her then. And now, when the cab had brought her there, she could see that there were not so many inhabitants. "Anybody home?" She knocked on the window. The house sloped and seemed smaller than it had seemed to her before. "Come in just for fun," a woman passed by. Okay, Naomi was surprised. She went through the gate, then into the house. It didn't smell very good. "Aunt Cindy," shouted the girl. "Who is it?" she heard from the room. "It's me, Naomi. Remember, me and Grandma used to come to visit you all the time," she told her. "Oh, Naomi, come in." The girl entered the room. The woman was lying in bed. It was obvious that she was sick. Everything around her was dirty and dark. "What's wrong with you?" Naomi was amazed that she hadn't reported anything to anyone. "It's just something that happened. I came home from the hospital and I'm lying here. Neighbors go help, but still, everything is not the same," Caroline complained. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Naomi was still standing in the middle of the room. Why burden anyone with your problems? She wanted to smile, but she did it very badly. "I see. I think that you will not refuse me hospitality, and in return, I will do everything here and help you," Naomi said. "Great, stay. I won't be bored," said Caroline. From that moment, Naomi started cleaning the house. She went to the store and bought some groceries to cook something in the evening. As she walked down the street, she realized that there were only a few houses left in the village, just like the inhabitants. "Hello, why did everyone leave?" Naomi asked a woman passing by. "I don't know. They're all going to the city," she shrugged. "I see." Naomi nodded her head. It was even better for her. Less people, less gossip. "Who are you? Who are you here to see?" the local woman asked back. To Caroline, "She is sick. She needs care." Naomi caught herself thinking that she had started to lie a lot lately. "Oh, that's good, and we're all worried about her." The woman smiled. "Everything will be fine." They walked down the street together. "And why are you? Do not live there, at home," nodded her head interlocutress. "I broke up with my husband. He left. So I decided to hide somewhere to not see anyone." The girl lied again. "Oh, it's nice here," smiled the woman. "By the way, my name is Naomi." She waited for her to introduce herself. "And I'm Anna," she said in a friendly manner. "Nice to meet you," Naomi smiled back. She went to the store, bought, of course, not everything she needed, but something. "I'm back," she informed Caroline when she got to the house. She heard nothing in reply. She was frightened, but when she entered the room, she realized that her mistress was just sleeping. The girl covered her with a blanket and herself went to the kitchen. Naomi liked it here very much. She remembered from her childhood how she used to go swimming with the local kids. Now she wanted to dive into the cool water. She was alone here. No one was bothering her at all. And that was a good thing. Recently, Naomi thought about herself, her life, her health. It was sad that everything turned out this way, but there was nothing left. She didn't take any tests on purpose because she didn't even want to know that there was something wrong with her. Today and the next few days, she spent a lot of time on the beach. "Caroline, how are you?" She came to the house, which was now bright with sunlight. She was fine, she said, but she sounded like she was moaning. Great. Naomi saw her cheer up, but she realized she wasn't really. The woman was constantly on painkillers. The girl herself did not think about anything. She considered the diagnosis, which she had recently learned about, very terrible and fatal. So she thought that as long as she was given, she would spend her time here. Maybe someday she would invite her mom to visit, but that was something to think about later. For now, she needed to get the house in proper shape. She had already done it inside, but now she had to do something outside, because everything looked not very nice there either. "Baba Anna," Naomi had come to the woman's house and was now calling out to her. Yes, Naomi, she went outside. Isn't there a couple of sturdy men who could help me? Asked the girl. Oh, I'm not here, but you can call and they'll come, she said. But Naomi didn't want to invite anyone to the village. She decided that she would do everything in time. Now she was in no hurry. Thank you, she went back. Wait. Come in for a cup of tea, the woman offered her. Thank you, the girl went to her. She didn't want to talk to anyone at first, but knowing how people lived in the village, she didn't want them to say anything about her. Caroline, now I'll heat up dinner and we'll eat. Naomi thought that here she began to feel something different than before. She wanted so badly to call her friend, to tell her that she was doing well, but she didn't. She had thoughtfully changed her phone number when she left, and now no one knew where she was or how to call her. She'd also warned her mom not to give her contacts to anyone. Oh, I feel so bad today, the woman said. Now Naomi went to the room to give the mistress a shot. Naomi, sit down, she was breathing heavily. What? The woman came closer to her and sat down beside the bed. Listen, I have no one. All my life I thought, here now, I'll earn money, and then a husband and children. But you see, as it turned out, if I'm gone, you can live in this house, I'm there. She pointed her hand to the table and stopped talking, closed her eyes. It was obvious that it was difficult for her to talk. Naomi took Naomi's injection and gave it to the woman. You could hear her feeling better. Thank you, Cindy looked at the girl. It's going to be okay, Naomi repeated like a mantra. Thank you. You got here just in time, the woman said. A month passed, the second, as Naomi lived here. She liked everything, only she missed her mother very much. The girl went every day to the neighbors, which were not so many. She tried to pay attention to each of them. On some days she made pies and invited everyone to her yard. Carolina was getting worse every day. Maybe you should go to the hospital, Naomi suggested it. No, they wouldn't help, she coughed. I don't know how to help you, Naomi cried every day. You don't have to help me, just let it go. The woman stood her ground. I just can't do that. Lately the mood was changing by the hour. It's okay. Caroline held Naomi's hand. She was gone after 4 months of Naomi living here. Baba Anna. Naomi came running to her in the night. What's wrong? She ran out of the house in a scarf. Caroline. Naomi couldn't speak quietly. My God. The neighbor woman understood at once. Come on, I'm scared. She did not know what to say and how to behave at this moment. Now run to the others. She waved her hand at her. Okay. Naomi went to the next neighbors. As she ran, she wiped her feet so badly she couldn't get up afterward. The women did everything right. They called the paramedics. The paramedics documented everything. They didn't take the woman anywhere because it was written in her medical history that she was sick. Everything is ready. We can bury her, Anna said sadly. Good, agreed everyone else, and only Naomi could not come to her senses. But she gathered her thoughts, and everyone went to the cemetery. It was business as usual there. After all sat down at the table, memorialized, said a few words, and began to disperse. And you, girl, why don't you take care of yourself? Asked Naomi Anna, who stayed here. Don't you understand? The girl looked at her with big eyes. You'd have a baby under your heart, smiled Grandma Anna. What? It can't be. Now Naomi realized why she felt so bad and her mood was changing. It can, and indeed it can, smiled the woman. And what to do now? Was as the frightened girl. You what? Baba Anna laughed. No, sorry, Naomi realized that now she could give herself away. You see, her husband left and left you a present, the woman said. Yes, a present, Naomi shook her head. Now she wanted to be alone to think. Don't be sad. We'll help you with everything, Anna said. Forgive me, I'm tired. I need to rest and think about everything, Naomi said to her neighbor. That's it, I understand, I'm leaving. She got up and went to the exit. And Naomi was left alone. She sat by the window and began to think about what to do and how to be further. If there really was a disease, it could be transmitted to the child. If you go to register, you have to take tests. Everything will be clear at once. No, I will not do anything. Let everything go as it goes, she said to herself. The next day, the girl went to the city, went to the store, bought tests, and then everything that may be useful in childbirth. She realized that there would be a lot of blood, so she took gloves for her hands so as not to endanger anyone. And as for the baby, she had wanted one for a long time, and there was no way she was going to give it up now and not hurt it. Naomi had made up her mind finally. Since Grandma Anna knew about her situation, she had already told everyone the good news. When Naomi arrived from town, they were waiting for her. One brought milk, the other curd. Here, now you need it, all your own, homemade, useful. They gave the girl all this in her hands. Thank you. The girl was grateful. Eat to your health, they smiled, sincerely happy for the girl. Thank you very much, Naomi smiled, but she wanted to cry. She went back into the house. The girl realized that now, if she had a child, he would need a lot of things. She used to have some savings of her own, and Caroline gave her pension. It was enough for everything. Now he had to figure out something to earn money. There were no organizations here, except for the store, but there was a salesman. Yes, and now, when her belly starts to grow, Naomi won't be able to stand behind the counter for hours at a time. So let's remember the youth, Naomi said to herself, and went to the room. She saw there Carolina had a lot of yarn and different material. The girl took out yarn and needles, sat down in an armchair, and began to knit. Not an hour passed, and she already had a small toy in her hands. Great. She evaluated her own work. After that, she went and sat down at the computer to sell. It is necessary to tell people that she is doing it. Naomi created a small website, advertised that she knits toys and sews to order. After that, she started making products. When Grandma Anna came to visit her and saw all this, first began to grumble that when pregnant knit is not allowed, the baby can be harmed. But Naomi did not believe in such omens. She continued, "You know what, and take my old machine, even though it is many years old, but it can still do a lot of things," said the woman. "You have no idea how you will help me." Naomi has already thought about this topic, wanted to rent somewhere. "Nothing, sew me a robe," laughed the neighbor. From that moment, the girl began to sew. She was good at it. One of the women from the village went to the market in town every day. She sold milk, cheese, and cottage cheese there. "Hello, Maria." Naomi came to her one day. Her belly was already visible. "Hi, Naomi," she greeted her. "Look what I brought you." The girl took out of the bag new curtains for the windows, a robe and pajamas for the woman's husband. "Oh, what are you doing? Why so much?" the woman asked her. "I want to ask you for a favor, and I can only pay with this," Naomi said modestly. "Ask for whatever you want." The local woman wondered, "Could you take my toys to the market? Maybe someone will buy them?" She gave the bag for the woman to look at. "Sure," smiled Maria. "Thank you. There on the tags is written my email address. Maybe someone will start to order," showed the girl to the woman. "I see your point," nodded the woman. She left the next day in the morning, and in the evening she brought Naomi the proceeds. She sold them all. "You wouldn't believe how popular they are," Maria said admiringly. "I'm so happy. Will you take more?" Naomi asked. Even though the earnings were not so big, but still, it was enough for something. After that, a good sale started. Since Naomi was alone, she didn't have time to make much. It was frustrating, but the girl tried. One evening, Anna came to Naomi's house. She entered the house and looked at the products that the girl makes for a long time. "Everything is so beautiful. People like it for a reason," she said. "Yes, thank you," was grateful to all these residents, Naomi. "Listen, my dear." The woman sat down at the table. "You're due soon, and you're not even going to the hospital. You see, I have a fear of big cities lately. I don't know, maybe it was the divorce. I had to lie to the girl again. And where are you going to give birth?" Grandma made big eyes. Here, she showed me the place she had prepared for the birth. "What? Are you crazy?" Grandma Anna was surprised. "What's wrong? Everyone used to give birth like this." Naomi almost cried. She was waiting and afraid of this conversation. "Okay, and then what?" The woman didn't understand. "Nothing, we'll give birth, then we'll register the child, and that's it." Naomi shrugged her shoulders because she didn't know what would happen afterwards. "Okay, girl, you are risky. You need to tell Aurora what you have made up." She stood up and headed for the exit. "Thank you." The girl threw her arms around the woman. Sometimes Naomi, when she wasn't working, started to think about how and what would happen. She hadn't told her mom how surprised she would be when she found out about her grandson. And that was the worst part. Sooner or later, if she was sick, someone would find out. "Everything will be fine," Naomi said with each stitch as she knitted or sewed, it calmed her down a bit. When the girl was already in her last month, she received a letter in the mail. It was from some private store that wanted to order from the girl a small batch of toys to try out. That day, Naomi had a feast. She made pies again, cut up salads, and invited the closest people, which was practically everyone. I didn't think it would work out, shook her head at Maria, who was still driving and selling what the girl gave her. To be honest, I didn't really believe it myself, Naomi said quietly. Okay, it's okay. Grandma Anna stroked her arm. A week later, Naomi went into labor. She made her way to her neighbor's house and told her everything. At first she groaned, then screamed and ran to Aurora, who knew how to deliver babies. It's like a primitive system. You could have called the hospital, Aurora said. It's too late to call somewhere else, grumbled Anna. Water, the woman commanded. Here, Naomi handed her a bag containing bandages, gauze, gloves, masks, and more. What's all this for? Aurora didn't understand. Just in case, for sterility, Naomi said between contractions. Okay, Aurora and Anna put everything on. They looked ridiculous now. Oddly enough, everything went very well. The whole thing lasted about 3 hours. And here's a mother holding her newborn son. Should we call an ambulance? Aurora asked the girl. If necessary, I'll do it myself, she thanked her. Aurora left, and Anna stayed in the house for a long time. She cleaned everything, washed the floors. Now it seemed as if nothing had ever happened here. What will you name your son? The woman asked. John said a happy Naomi. She smiled. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. She walked over and looked at the young girl and the little baby in her arms. If it wasn't for you, cried the girl. She thought to herself, if it weren't for her, then she wouldn't have been so careless in the park. There wouldn't have been all this. But on the other hand, she wouldn't have a son now either. She was so tired that, while John sniffled beside her, she dozed off too. She woke up to her son stirring. Naomi was so curious about all this, she tried to feed the baby, but there was no milk yet. The next day, the whole village came to congratulate the young girl. It was necessary to go to register the baby, but Naomi could not do it yet. Everything hurt. Do you want me to do it? Grandma Anna asked. No, now, a little step back, and I'll do everything myself. And who will let you do it? Naomi said quietly. As you know, shrugged the neighbor. For now, the girl was happy every day when she was near Stipa. She couldn't believe that such a thing had happened in her life. But it was true, so it had to be accepted. Alone, Naomi was good, but now, with a small child, knitting and sewing was possible only in those moments when John was asleep. The girl was very tired. She just fell off her feet. But there were orders, and not small. The girl had a choice. To refuse all customers and lose them forever, or a little patience and have an established base. Now the girl had to make another separate tab, which demonstrated what Naomi was sewing, because where the toys were, it was no longer relevant. What are you doing, girl? You must be exhausted already. Grandma Anna came to her once again. No, I'm fine, Naomi answered her. Why haven't you registered the baby yet? The woman asked. We'll do it, Naomi said tiredly. Look at you. Who do you look like? And let me take John for a walk, and you get some sleep, the woman said sternly. Naomi looked at her and fell asleep as she walked. That's it, no more talking, go to bed, the woman commanded. Thank you. That's all the girl said. While Baba Anna went outside, the young mistress was already asleep. She was so tired lately that she just couldn't stay on her feet anymore. Sam came home. He lived with his mom. He was fine, but he couldn't forget one thing that happened to him recently in the park of the neighboring town. Son, why are you sitting there? At least go out, the woman said to him. I don't want to, he told her. The young man worked for himself. He practically never left the house because he didn't need to. How so? I don't want to. All young guys go out, meet girls, and you are always alone, like a beggar. The woman was indignant. I like one girl, he confessed to his mother. And why don't you go out with her? Don't invite her to visit. The woman was surprised. Because I don't know her, he answered truthfully. What do you mean? The woman didn't understand. Just like that, I don't know, that's all. The young man began to feel sad. At that moment in the park, he didn't know what had gotten into him. He just wanted to kiss her, but it had gone too far. And now those eyes, the smell, the hair, everything came back to him, and he couldn't get rid of it. When a few weeks had passed since that moment, the young man decided to go to the place where he had been not so long ago and meet his mysterious stranger. He remembered that she had told him about the neighborhood where she lived. He would walk there. Then he would go to the park, sit on the same bench, waiting for her to remember and come. But it didn't happen, and the guy was bored and suffering. "Why are you like this? How long has it been?" His friend asked him. "You see, there is a girl I want to find, but I cannot," he said to his friend. "And what's the problem? The internet will help you," he replied and smiled. "You see, I don't even know her name," he still said sadly. "What do you know?" "Nothing, the city where she lives. And that's all." Sam waved his hands. Understandably, the friend asked everything he knew, wrote down, promised to think of something. But the latter couldn't do anything about it either. Naomi's social media accounts didn't list her as living in the town where they'd met Sam. And there was no other way to find her. "So friend, don't be sad. Let's go to a club or a cafe together, meet someone, get acquainted," Alex asked him. "No, I don't want to." The guy shook his head negatively. "And suddenly, you will meet her, and she is not the one you dream about. You said yourself that you saw her only a few minutes," said the comrade. "You don't understand. I feel like we have a connection," Sam told him. "Okay, you said you know what neighborhood she lives in. Maybe we'll go there and just walk through all the houses," Alex suggested. "Do you have any idea how many there are?" The young man was surprised. "Well, what do you suggest then? Imagine how many women from this city, and suddenly she was there, not a local, just like you." Could not change his friend's mind. "Alex, I don't want to talk about it." Sam didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk about it at all. "I see, you don't want to talk about it. Just say so," Alex told him. They talked a little more, and then Sam withdrew into himself again. He sat down at his computer every night, opened the girls from the city where they met, and just looked at them. Maybe he'd fall for her, but unfortunately that didn't happen, and Sam suffered again. "Why is she so firmly planted in my head?" he asked himself. "Son, come out." His mother came home from work. He sometimes thought she was calling him to help him with something. But no, in the corridor stood another someone's daughter. "Hello," the young man said to the girl, but he looked at his mother with judgment. "Why are you standing there? Invite Casey into the room," the woman said. "Come in." The young man couldn't tell his mother in front of the girl that she was meddling in his life. "Hi," she walked by, clearly shy. "Mom, why do you bring them here?" The guy told her. "Look, what nice girls. Why did not you want to communicate with them?" asked him a woman. "Mom." Sam looked at her indignantly, took the kettle, cups, and tea, and went to the room where Casey was waiting for him. "All right, you sit here and I'll go for a walk," the woman said. "All right," nodded Casey's head. As soon as his mother left the apartment, Sam immediately relaxed. He'd start talking and making things up so that Casey would see it all and go off on her own. "You think I like it?" She got the hint. "Then why did you come?" The young man didn't understand her. "I couldn't say no to my mom." "Neither could you." Casey rolled her eyes. At that moment, Sam realized she wasn't the good girl her mother had told him she was. "Do you want a beer?" the young man asked her. "Yeah," she nodded her head. Sam realized that at least he could talk to someone normally instead of sitting with hot tea in his hands and pretending to like everything. "You want to go out tonight?" Casey asked. "Nah, I don't want to." He turned on the TV, threw his feet up on the couch, printed out a beer. "Why, what's sitting here in this apartment, and even next to his mom?" She didn't understand. It was all temporary, he was sure of it. Once a couple of years ago, he'd set out to buy his own apartment, and he'd done it. But then his sister and her husband got into a mortgage. That's when his mother suggested renting out his apartment so she could use the money to help pay the monthly payments. Sam loved and respected his sister, so he agreed to help her. But he had a condition. As soon as he finds a girl, he moves back to this place. That's what he shared with the girl. Wow, I couldn't do that. Casey remembered her life with her parents and younger brother in the same apartment. But I could. For some reason at that very moment, the guy remembered his stranger and he felt sad again. "All right, I should probably go." Casey got up off the couch. "Okay, what do we say you don't like me?" The young man smiled. I don't care, she shrugged. Okay, you're normal. Don't listen to your mother, Sam advised her. Okay, you are too, by the way, she smiled at him and walked out the doorway. After that, Sam started thinking about her again, the one he had met so suddenly and then lost as well. At that moment, his phone rang. He got distracted, answered it. It was Alex's best friend. Are you still souring at home? He asked him. Yeah, my mom just brought my girlfriend over. Sam told his friend how his mom was matchmaking him. I wish I could do that, the friend envied. Want me to introduce you? The guy asked in a friendly way. Sure, can you? Alex wasn't sure about it. Wait, the young man went to the balcony. Casey just came out of the entrance. He shouted to her, asked her to wait a bit. She got curious, she stopped. That's it, friend. I'll call you back. Meet me today at 7 as usual at our place, Sam said, and hung up. He changed his clothes, went out, closed the doors, and went downstairs. Did I forget something? She looked at him. No, I just thought we could go out tonight. He walked beside her. Well, why the sudden change? She was walking beside him. Honestly? He turned to her. Yeah, she was smiling. I have a friend, Alex. He's been looking for a normal girl for a long time. I suggested he meet you, he laughed. What are you doing? She didn't understand. Thought now that I'm acting like a mother by pandering, the guy explained to her. Well, yeah, Casey agreed with him. So are you in? Sam asked cheerfully. We can, why not? If you're so fun, you're probably a friend too, she concluded. Yeah, Alex would be even more fun. They were already on their way to the cafe where their friend was supposed to join them. They arrived, sat down at the table. Sam looked at the clock. It was still half an hour before Alex was supposed to show up. The young man made an order for now. He was sure that Casey must like the comrade. When the maid arrived, he was cheerful and he liked Casey right away, especially since her best friend had recommended her. Hi, I'm Alex. He took a seat next to her. Casey, she looked over and realized that her new acquaintance hadn't fooled her. Well, you guys hang out and I should probably get going. Sam started to get ready. No, where are you going? For some reason, they started stopping him together. Sit, socialize, why you need me? Young man did not understand. Come on, really go, his friend waved his hand at him. He wanted to socialize with Casey, and he knew that if Sam stayed here, he would be sad all evening again. Sam went home. It was possible to please his mom that Casey was attached after all. Of course, that wasn't the right word for the girl, but he couldn't think of any other. I'm home, he walked into the apartment. Where's Svatoshka? His mom came out. She stayed at the cafe with Alex, said the guy cheerfully. What about Alex? What about you? The mother got excited. Look, she's nice, and Alex has needed one for a long time. So I introduced them. Sam went into the room and closed the doors behind him. Good, went the woman to the kitchen. She wanted to cry. She thought that her son was not all right with the psyche. The last few months, he just sits all day at home. She tried various ways to get him to wake up, but there was nothing she could do. Friend, hello. The next day, Sam heard his friend's voice on the phone. Hey, how's it going? I was wondering. Everything is great. Casey is really very cool and good girl. We agreed to meet today, Alex said. Well, I told you so. I was happy for my friend Sam. Now Alex started dating Casey. Sometimes best friends were together. And Sam could really see that the girl was treating the young man perfectly. Birthdays, other holidays now this trio attended together, but Sam couldn't always go with the couple. Today you can't refuse to go to the restaurant with us, Alex said almost a year after he met Casey. Did you make up your mind? His friend asked him. Yes, look, he took the ring out of his pocket and showed it to his friend. Wow, and he remembered his mysterious stranger again. Stop being sad. How long can it be? So much time has passed. Are you going to suffer for the rest of your life? Said the friend seriously. Leave me alone. If it passes, you will be the first to know about it. Suddenly, I will come now to your wedding, and there's the first beauty or a great girl, said Sam. Okay, I'll wait for you at 6 o'clock at the restaurant. Just try to be late. Alex threatened with his fist. Of course I'll be there. I couldn't miss such a moment. The one who brought them together and introduced them. He came home. His mother was cooking something in the kitchen. Mammy, I have great news for you. Alex is proposing to Casey today. The young man kissed her. Come on, we should call her mother. She wiped her hands. No, you don't need to call anyone. It's a surprise, said the son, and stopped her. Well, when will you decide to do it? It's been so long, and you're still a recluse. She shook her head. Oh, Mom, it's not about me now. The young man wrinkled his nose. In the evening, he was at the restaurant at the appointed time. Alex was already waiting for him. Well, are you ready? Sam asked him. I don't know. I'm very nervous, admitted the comrade. It is understandable. I hope that when I have such a situation, you will support me too. Sam looked at him. What are you talking about? Naturally, they hugged. At that moment, Casey and her parents walked into the restaurant. They approached the table. Everyone thought that today would be just an acquaintance. But when everyone was seated, Alex, in order not to drag, got down on one knee, gave his beloved a ring, and asked if she agreed to marry him. Of course, she really hadn't expected that. Sam looked at the couple. He didn't realize it could end up like this when he suggested his friend to meet Casey. That's it. Now we have to get ready for the wedding, the young man said. Keep in mind, you'll be a witness. Alex looked at him. They've been gone for a long time. The guy was surprised. Will we have them, Casey? He looked at the girl. Yes, she confirmed. And who will Casey have? Sam raised an eyebrow. The witness? She clarified. Well, not at the guy. You'll see, was all the girl replied. Okay, said the friend then. Nothing interesting happened next, so Sam sat for a while longer and started to get ready to go home. He came in. His mom was still awake. So how'd it go? She asked. Great, Mom, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow I'll tell her everything, he told her that evening. Okay, did not insist, Mother. The night passed as usual. Nothing happened. In the morning, when Sam woke up, he first sat down at the computer, did all his chores, and then went out to wash his face and have breakfast. Son, you need a suit right now, the woman said. Why, no one is wearing suits now. He didn't understand. You what? The groom will be in a suit, the bride in a beautiful dress, and you in a t-shirt and jeans. Was she in bewilderment? And why not? We don't know yet what Alex will be wearing, he mumbled, not understanding why he necessarily needs to be in this constrained garment. No, a suit is absolutely necessary. His mother shook her head. Okay, I'll go look online now, he said and stood up. Wait, she stopped him. Well, what else? He didn't want to talk about the suit anymore. Now I'll show you something, or rather someone. I have a friend who works in a small store. She found a unique supplier. The young girl sews unique things that no one else has, Mom said, and at that moment turned on her computer. Oh, Mom, come on. I'd rather do it myself, sighed Sam. He was already tired of her hyper-parenting. No, you just look, and maybe you'll like it. At that moment, the computer turned on. The woman entered the site, and Sam couldn't believe his eyes. His so mysterious stranger from the park was looking at him from the monitor. Wait, he walked over and sat down in a chair. There, what did I say? Wait, I'll show you what she's doing. The woman leaned over and wanted to do something. Please, the young man looked at her. Okay, you wanted to do it yourself. Look, she didn't mind. The main thing was that he was interested. It was some kind of miracle. He couldn't believe it was her. Why did it happen? When he'd been looking for her for so long, his mother just knew about her. Sam still couldn't believe it. He was looking for some kind of trick, wondering if it wasn't her, but just a girl who looked like her. But no, it was the girl who had once twisted her leg, and they had gone to the park with her. The young man copied the address of her page, threw it to himself, and immediately went to his room. Hello, he wrote to her in private messages. After he sent it all, after every second he checked whether she had read it or not. Good afternoon. The reply didn't come until an hour and a half later. In that time, Sam was all exhausted. He wondered if it was a fake site. I would like to order a costume from you. I will be a witness at the best friend, he wrote her. Before that, the young man thought about whether to tell her or not, and then decided that she would take him for a madman, did not. Sure, now I'll drop you where you need to take the measurements and the fabric you can choose, wrote him a seamstress. Great, I'm waiting. His hands were shaking. He was so anxious he was even sweating. When the message came back from her, Sam went to his mother. Mom, urgently need a centimeter tape to take measurements. He spoke quickly. Wow, a minute ago he didn't want anything and now he already needs to take measurements. She was surprised. Can you make things quicker? He asked her. Sure. Now, the woman opened the dresser and started looking. She pulled out everything she needed, wrote down on paper what she was measuring, and then started twisting her son this way and that. When everything was ready, he grabbed the paper and went to the computer to rewrite everything. The mother was surprised at this quickness. I'm all done, I'm sending it. He wrote and sent all the numbers and the kind of fabric he liked. It wasn't really like that. Sam had picked the first one he saw. He just wanted her to answer him quickly. Okay, I'll take a look and text you if it's not clear, was all she said. Okay, I'm waiting. He pressed the send button. There was so much excitement inside that he couldn't even breathe. The next moment, the guy grabbed his phone. He wanted to call his friend to share his joy with him. Alex, hi. He spoke quickly and loudly. Sam, I can't talk yet, quickly muttered the friend. Too bad, sighed the man and hung up the phone. He couldn't sit or stand or do anything else. He wanted to sit at the computer, to write to her. Sam knew now that the girl's name was Naomi, and that was fine. Today, he'd been in a rut all day. His mother had said something, someone had called, but he hadn't picked up the phone. The guy just imagined how he would come to her, because the city where she lived was only a few kilometers away. Hello. He heard one thin peak in the morning and immediately jumped up. He knew she was writing. Good morning. It didn't take a second for him to reply. I looked it up and made the cutouts. Now he texted him. That's great. Maybe I can come over for a fitting, he asked the girl. Usually, if all the measurements are correct, there is no need for a fitting, she replied. But I still want to come, Sam insisted. No, that's not an option. I live very far away from you, she refused. I don't get it. I thought it was in a neighboring town, she stated. No, that's outdated information. I'm in the South now, she clarified. I don't care. I'll come get the suit myself. Sam was not only persistent, but as brash as it might seem. Goodbye. She sent the message and exited the chat room. Sam got up from his desk, grabbed his phone, and drove to his friend's house. He didn't realize what he should do now. He knew the girl's name and the approximate region where she lived. That's what he told Alex. You know what you're talking about. If before we didn't know the name, but only the neighborhood and at least the city. Now we know the name and the whole South. Do you realize what you're talking about? Alex, there she is. I found her. She's practically already met me, Sam said. Well, I don't know. Offer her double the price and tell her you'll be there in the near future. Shrugged and suggested a friend. Great idea. He said goodbye to his friend and went home. When he got there, he sat down again at the computer. He saw that the girl was not online, but he wrote to her anyway. Naomi, hello. I need this suit very urgently. My friend is getting married. The wedding is in a couple of days. We just can't wait for it to arrive in the mail. If you want, I can offer double the price, he wrote to her. He sat at the monitor, waiting for her to at least read his messages. But an hour, 2, 3 passed, and the message still hung there unread. He went and laid down on the couch. If she wrote him the address now, he would get off his seat and go to her. It didn't matter what transportation it was, plane, train, car. He would do anything to meet her. Sam, let's go to dinner, his mother called him. Okay, he got up and realized that he hadn't eaten anything since morning. The young man went to the kitchen. Even though he was hungry, he didn't eat like he always did. What's wrong? Mom asked. I'll tell you later, if everything works out, answered her son with some riddles. Something with work? She began to guess. No, Mom, you can't guess. Sam wanted to eat and go back to his room. Okay, you don't have to say it. The woman pretended to be offended. Mom, it's okay. Her son came up to her and hugged her. He realized he couldn't tell her anything yet. When Sam got to his room, he saw that not only had the message been read, but there was a reply. He quickly sat down at the table. Well, if you need it so urgently, you can come over, Naomi wrote. And these were the cherished words that the guy had been waiting for. Write your address, he wrote it. And now the seconds stretched like hours as he waited for her to reply. And lo and behold, at the top of the screen he saw running dots. That meant the girl was writing. Sam crossed his fingers. And the next moment the address popped up on the screen with the neighborhood, city, street, and house. How happy the young man was now. Alex, I found her. Without greeting or any introductions, Sam told his friend. Great. You remember that the wedding is in a month. Will you have time? Reminded his friend. Of course, and I won't be there alone. The young man was sure. Wow, you're so confident, his friend marveled. It's okay. Sam didn't want to talk anymore. Okay, friend, I wish you good luck. Fly to your favorite stranger, and then I'll wait for you at my party. Alex wanted to say goodbye. Her name is Naomi, Sam said. Great, answered the friend. After that, the young man ordered plane tickets. He was ready even to refuse her, just to see her again. Are you going somewhere? Sam's mother asked him. Of course I have to pick up my suit, he didn't tell her. It was only a day away, but the day didn't want to end. There was nothing Sam could do. In the morning, he wanted to do things to make the time pass faster, but that wasn't the case. The minutes dragged on, they added up to hours, but even after that it was very long. Mom, I'm off. He picked up his bag when it was 6 hours before the flight. Good luck. I don't know why you're so worried, but I wish you a good flight, she hugged her son. You have no idea what awaits you if everything works out well. He was confusing her again. Okay, she pressed her lips together, realizing her son was up to something. Sam was on his way to his favorite stranger. He called her that in his head, even though he knew her name and where she lived. He got on the plane, and in a couple of hours he was going to land in the place where his happiness and love might live. And again time, which in no way wanted to move. And then the young man fell asleep, and he dreamed of her, so tender and beautiful. At the airport, he took a cab. It did not matter how much it cost. He was going to meet his destiny. Naomi was in the yard at that moment. She was doing something. John was sleeping in a stroller. Grandma Anna came in to see her. Well, how are you? She asked the girl. Everything is fine, she shrugged her shoulders. Any orders? The woman knew all about it. Yes, one should come today for a suit, Naomi said. How to come? You usually by mail? Anna was surprised. Yes, but this one insisted, promised double the price. She looked up at the woman. Wow, so you liked it a lot, concluded the grandmother. Probably didn't know Naomi. She was so tired during all this time that already, and could not speak on any subject. If it had been up to her, she would have given up a long time ago. But she had a child growing up, so there was nothing she could do. Naomi sighed heavily and continued to sit and watch her son sleep. Naomi heard a car pull up to the gate. She realized that other than a guest who needed a suit urgently, no one could have arrived. Naomi went into the house to retrieve what she had made. She took the roll, and as she was walking out, she heard a car pull away. I don't get it, she said, and walked faster to the gate to see what was going on. Sam, on the other hand, let go of the cab driver at that moment, got out of the car, and with quick steps also walked to the gate. He stood in front of it and waited to be opened. Naomi opened it. At first she didn't notice him, and when she saw him, she immediately began to resent him. Young man, what kind of joke is this? Why did you let the car go? Here it is later. She stopped talking and stared at him. Naomi, hi, Sam smiled. This can't be happening. She dropped the suit roll out of her hands. Why can't it be? I've been looking everywhere for you. He took her by the arms and no one cared about the suit bag. Who are you? She cried, at which point the young man pulled her close to him. My name is Sam. I purposely did not tell you anything when we corresponded with you. I wanted to come, he explained to the girl. Let's go inside, she said, as if something was about to happen. Okay, he followed her. You were looking for me on purpose. I'm not going anywhere, and I won't take any tests, she told him. What do you mean? The young man didn't understand. About your illness, I realized that just like that you would not look for me, and so insist on coming for the suit. She did not look at him. What sickness? He got up from the chair he was sitting in. Are you going to fake it now? She looked at him as if she wanted to destroy him with one look. Naomi explained, I don't understand anything, he approached her. No need to. I already succumbed to your charms once. She tried to remove his hands. I don't understand anything. Tell me everything. It seems to me that it's not enough that you and I didn't know each other. So you're accusing me of something else, he looked at her. And the girl saw that the guy really didn't understand what she was saying. Then in the park, she stopped talking and turned away because she felt ashamed again, even though it had been so long. Well, what then in the park? He remembered that, and further, what she was accusing him of, it was unclear. And then she sobbed. So everything, I do not understand anything. We will now sit down, and you will tell me everything in order. He pulled her behind him and put her not on a chair, but on his lap. You really don't know anything. She couldn't believe it. Naomi, when she saw him at her gate, had thought he had been diagnosed with an illness, and now he needed to bring his partner to get tested too. That's why she was acting like this now. I'm listening to you carefully, muttered Sam calmly. Okay, then on the bench, she didn't have time to finish, he interrupted her. I remember that, and I've heard it more than once today. He wanted more than that. They never saw each other once after that, neither he nor she. They didn't know each other's names. What could be the complaints? So you told me that night that you were in our neighborhood at the dentist's. She looked at him. I had been, he remembered those words, but he didn't know what she was getting at. The next day, they called everyone there for dental treatment because she couldn't say why. Well, he waited. They found HIV. They had to take tests. She finished her sentence. So what next? He still didn't understand what story she was telling him. You don't understand, there was a sick person there, and you were treating teeth. She didn't finish. She thought he would understand. You thought I was in that clinic and you were infected. He finally got it. Why not? She was sitting with her back to him. Yes, I was in that clinic, but not on that day, but before that. And in fact, if that was the case, I would have been called. You leak contacts there. He pressed her against him and laughed. What you mean? She turned to him. Yep, he nodded, not yet knowing what she had done to cover it all up. Here I am. She covered her eyes with her hands. Uncomprehending, he turned her towards him and took her hands away from her face. You have no idea. And she told him how she had written a letter to her husband, how she had come here, looked after her aunt. Well, you have no idea. The young man didn't know what to say. Wait, she pulled away from him. What? He didn't understand how that could even happen in life. My God, she cried. At that moment, the doors opened and Baba Anna entered the house. Naomi, he's awake, he's hungry, she said. Let him hear, got up from the lad's knees, the girl, and went towards the woman. Yeah, she left and came back a minute later with a baby in her arms. Sam watched all this action and thought he was too late. His beloved stranger was already married and had a child. He even got up and went into the kitchen so as not to disturb her feeding. After that, he stood and thought what to do now. Apparently, he really let the cab go for nothing. Naomi came out to him a few minutes later. She looked at the young man and smiled. You know what they say about coincidences not being random. She couldn't stop smiling. I don't get it. He stared at her. Today in this house, whatever sentence was a mystery to him. It's your son. She lowered her gaze. What do you mean? He furrowed his brow. Now the worst thoughts of the one he had idolized in his head for so long came to mind. Like this, she spread her hands. Then the girl knit him by the arm and led him to the table. There she sat him down, told him how and what, about her husband, about the meeting, how she had decided to take revenge. And that's how it turned out. If it wasn't for that story, she'd probably still be living with the guy who cheated on her. Why didn't you get tested? Sam asked her an elementary question. I worked in a school. It's a small town. I didn't need to explain further. Oh, you poor thing. Why did you leave so quickly? If I'd known your name, I would have found you by now. He hugged her again. Sam, what are we gonna do? She asked him that question, and then she pulled away. What are you doing? He didn't understand her again. I said we, although I don't know. Maybe it's a coincidence again today. She looked at him fearfully. What are you talking about? How many months I've been looking for you. My friends helped me. I know all the girls in the city by sight. He did not deceive her. Do you know how afraid I was of this disease that I still have not registered John? The girl confessed to him. That's great, but now he will have a normal middle name, smiled the young man. I'm afraid not if Evan hasn't divorced me. She lowered her gaze again. That's okay. Know that you'll be fine from now on. Sam pulled her close again. Have you been thinking about me? She couldn't believe that everything that was happening right now was true. You have no idea how. He wouldn't let her go. I couldn't stop thinking about you at first either. I've always been modest. I've never done anything like that. I've never even kissed in public, she confessed to him. Well, we were not in public. He remembered how she had an ice cream over her lip, which he wanted to remove, leaned over and kissed the girl. At that moment, Anna entered the house again. She looked at the young people and could not understand anything. "Is your husband yours?" she asked, pointing at Sam. "No, but," she looked up at him. "I'll be there soon." He turned to his grandmother and smiled. "Great. Get her out of this neck of the woods. The girl has talent and she buried it here." The woman stopped talking. "Do you want something else?" He realized that there was a continuation in this tirade. "Will you accept her, son?" Baba Anna let her eyes go. "He's mine," Sam said calmly, not doubting it. "What do you mean?" The woman turned to Naomi. "I'll tell you later," the girl promised, though she knew she never would. All right, stay." The grandmother waved her hand at them and left the house. "Are you coming with me?" he asked the girl. "Where to?" she wondered. "To where I live," he said calmly. "I don't know." She turned to the bed where her son was sleeping. "Naomi, this can't be happening. I've been coming to this for so long." He snuggled into her shoulder. "Okay, I promise to think about it," she said. "Okay, I have a friend's wedding coming up. I ordered you a suit. That's the only reason I found you. In fact, you could say it was my mother who showed you to me." He sat back and smiled. "Oh, it wasn't on purpose," she sighed. "Of course, I just saw you. I decided to meet you by any means necessary." He pulled her to him again and hugged her. "Sam," she just looked at him and couldn't believe that this was how life worked. Once again, the girl remembered all the books and movies she had ever read or watched, and it was all just there. "Are you with me?" He asked her the question again. "Yes," she nodded. What did she have to lose? After all, she'd been through so much before. Now that she knew for sure she had no diagnosis, she could do anything. "Then a couple days here and we'll go to my place." He was happy. I agreed. By now she was already snuggling up to him herself. She had missed a strong male's shoulder for so long. "That's great. You can't imagine how happy my mom will be." They lay in bed in the evening. "I'm a little embarrassed," she said it, but she remembered that night in the park. She didn't think about it then. "Everything will work out. You will meet my friend, his future wife. We will be family friends," he said, and imagined how Alex will be surprised when he realizes that everything he said is true. The next day, Naomi told Sam that it was necessary to say goodbye to the neighbors. He didn't mind, even talked Maria's husband into going into town and shopping there. Everything was going great so far. "You know I own this house?" Naomi asked. "How would I know that?" He looked at her surprised. "Well, you should know." She kissed the young man. "It's good. We'll hire a crew. They'll do everything, and we'll have a cottage in the south." He hugged her. The most amazing thing began to happen next. When Sam took the plane tickets, Naomi realized that they were going to a city that was very close to where she was born and her mother lived. They got on the plane, flew. The girl was silent. They landed. John was nervous the whole way, probably because of his mother, because she had the same attitude. "Let's go, we should be met." Sam looked to see where Alex's car was. They pulled up, loaded their things into the trunk, drove off. Almost the whole way Naomi was silent. She just didn't know what to say. But when they pulled into her hometown, she couldn't believe it. "Let's go to our place. The girls will get acquainted right away," Alex suggested. "No, I have to go home first," Naomi said. "My place?" Sam turned to her. "No, to your place," she smiled. "I don't get it." He was very surprised. "Sam, this is the town where I was born and lived until I left with my husband to where we met," she began to explain to him. "I mean, we've always lived in such close proximity," and he smiled. Apparently, she was happy. Alex drove them to the house where Naomi's mother lived. They got out with all their things there. "Are you with me?" She turned to him. "Of course. I have to see my future mother-in-law and meet her." He took the luggage and they went. When the mother opened the doors, she looked at her daughter and the young man. She was just in shock. "Mamia, I'm sorry I was gone so long." They entered the apartment. "Daughter." She hugged her and started kissing her. "Meet your grandson, John. And this is Sam." The girl looked at the woman. "Naomi." She couldn't help herself and cried. "It's okay." They passed. The woman kept the baby in her arms. She just couldn't believe that her daughter had lived alone somewhere, had given birth, and hadn't even told her about it. "I believe everything's gonna be okay now," the woman said. "All right, ladies, get ready. My mom's worried too," Sam told them. Yes, now, no one argued with him anymore. They got into a cab and drove to where the young man lived. When they got upstairs and a woman opened the door, For a few seconds, everyone just stood there looking at each other. "Mom, are we just going to stand on the doorstep like this?" Sam asked her. "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm confused." The woman let them into the apartment. "Mommy, meet Naomi. This is Naomi, your future daughter-in-law. This is John, your grandson, and this is Naomi's mother." The young man introduced everyone. "How's that?" The landlady didn't understand. "Sometimes life is unpredictable and anything can happen," smiled the son. They all sat down at the table. When they started the conversation, it seemed it would never end. Sam's mother and Naomi stayed home. John was asleep, so they left him for a while too. And the young ones went to Alex and his fiancee's house. "Do you think your friends will accept me?" Naomi asked the young man. "Why shouldn't they accept you? You're with me and I'm the best friend." He didn't understand. "Well, things happen," she smiled at him. "Yes, I know that." He kissed her for the umpteenth time. They stopped at the entrance, got out of the car, thanked the cab driver. At that moment, Naomi saw a familiar figure. Nancy. She was happy to see her childhood friend on the bench. "Naomi, what are you doing here?" She was surprised too. "Here, meet Sam." "This is Sam. We're here to meet his friend," the girl said. "Nice to meet you, Nancy." The girl looked at him. "Okay, we're off," said Naomi. "I'm in this entryway too. Let's go together." Nancy didn't want to let them go. They entered, went up to the second floor. Sam went to the door. Nancy rushed there as well. "Are you going to this apartment too?" She looked surprised. "Yes," Sam nodded. "Naomi, it's Sveka who's getting married," Nancy announced excitedly. "It can't be." Turned to the young man, he was silent. They entered the apartment. On the threshold, they were met by the owner in an embrace with his future bride. "Casey." Naomi threw herself into her arms. "How was that possible?" Sam stood there looking at them. "What do you mean?" The girls didn't understand. "I've been looking for her for so long, and you were just there to tell me at least about my mom." Sam looked at Casey. "So you didn't even know her name?" Alex interrupted him. "That's right." The young man agreed with them. The young men all made their way into the room. They sat around the table and couldn't get enough of talking. "Nancy, will you mind if I make Naomi my witness?" Casey asked the girl. "Of course not. If he's the witness," she pointed to Sam, "I'll concede." That was the deal. They sat for a while longer and then separated. "I don't believe it's real," Naomi said. "Well, you can see that things have happened in your life." He wouldn't let her go, as if he was afraid of losing her again. "You're not letting me go to my mom's tonight," Naomi guessed. "I'm not letting you go anywhere else at all." He pulled her in and held her tight against him. They returned, the women still in the apartment where Sam lived. They told about the girlfriends. Naomi's mom was just shocked. And then the girl told about the cabin in the south. The moms immediately said that after the wedding they would go there and clean it up. "Are we having a wedding?" The girl smiled and looked at Sam. "If you don't mind, I'm all for it." He kissed her again and again. "I first need to know if I'm divorced or not." Naomi looked at her mother. "Divorced? The papers came long ago," she confirmed. "All right, I just have to register John," Naomi said sadly. "Why so sad?" Sam didn't understand. "I don't know, it's just," she shrugged. After that, the young man pulled her into his room. There he told her about the apartment, but if her mother was going to leave, there was no hurry. "Shall we just sign?" Naomi asked. "Are you okay with that?" He was embarrassed. Only now he thought he could have come with a ring. "Yes," she turned to him, wrapped her arms around him and pressed herself against him. "You're my one and only love for life." That's how coincidences happen. Sam didn't believe in his happiness.